Listen, you smell something?
Human emotions are materializing in the form of a viscous psychoreactive plasm with explosive supernormal potential.
What a discovery, a psychoreactive substance.
Do you know what this equipment is used for?
Boggle or Super Mario Brothers?
We'll have fun!
Yeah! They're still doing it. Really quite good work there.
My friend, don't be a jerk.
We've got no choice. Call the Ghostbusters.
Super Jackpot!
Welcome to Extraplasm Podcast. It's the only podcast on the internet that gets driven around in a 59 Miller Meteor full of paranormal equipment, homemade ecto cooler, and a couple of guys from Jersey when it visits New York City for a movie premiere. I'm your host, Jim Maritato, aka Vink Maniac on the internet, and I could not be more excited to bring you this episode of Extraplasm because this is our giant-sized special episode where we're joined by Jason Fitzsimmons to retell the tale of our adventure to cover the Ghostbusters Frozen Empire premiere in New York and to give you some insights on the new movie as we've now seen it after the review embargo has lifted. And I say giant size because this is indeed the longest ever episode of Extraplasm, measuring it at over 3.5 hours in length and covering nearly every aspect of our trip to New York, ranging from our experiences being chauffeured around the city by Ecto-1NJ, our visits to Hook and Ladder 8 and the New York Public Library, the Yes Have Some premiere party, Insomnia Cookies and their delicious snacks they've got available that are Ghostbusters themed, and of course, covering the premiere carpet and seeing Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. This was an amazing experience that I got to have with Jason Fitzsimmons over the last week or so. But fear not, we're going to dig into the movie, but if you're looking to be spoiler free, Jason and I won't tell you any details about this movie for at least the first 2 hours and 15 minutes of this episode, probably a little more than that. And when that's about to happen, there's a series of 4 containment unit klaxons to tell you that there's the last chance for you to punch out before we lower the laser containment grid on spoilers and openly talk about Frozen Empire. And for those of you wondering, Jim, why are you putting out a spoilery review on Wednesday when the first public screenings aren't until Thursday or Friday? The real reason is the review embargo has expired minutes before this episode was released, and as you'll hear me talk about in the content to follow, Gil Kennan actually gave me his proverbial blessing to do so. So if you don't want to hear the spoilers until after you see the movie, but you're happy to hear about the Ghostbusters News and Extraplasm collaboration at the premiere and all the fun that went on in New York City before we saw the movie, you've got a solid 2.5 hours almost of content, definitely 2 hours and 15 minutes to help you get warmed up for the movie. And then after you've seen it, you can check back in for the remaining hour and 15 that's left on the podcast. So keep that in mind. If you want to go in spoiler free, you've got 2 hours of content to check out to help you sort of get excited about going into the movie. But make sure you hit pause when you hear those klaxons from the containment unit if you don't want to hear the spoilers. Now, as for our usual headline segment, we're going to forego it this week because the episode is already really long. And frankly, the biggest news of the week is the release of the movie. If you head over to Ghostbusters News, you can find some cool things like TV appearances of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire cast and crew on CBS Morning News or The Tonight Show. There's an NHL promo for the movie that is not only just cool because it's hockey and Ghostbusters, but also because it took place at Madison Square Garden as the New York Rangers beat the Islanders 5-2, and that's a thing I'm a fan of. And another Adam Savage video dropped on the Tested YouTube channel. So all those things are out there. You can go take a look at them and watch them. I'm not going to give you a breakdown of each of them because, frankly, they're things that you can go check out and you can easily access each of them from Ghostbusters News. And to keep things short on headlines, like I said, we're not really going to get into them in depth. But outside of those items, there's a few teases of news that's yet to come, such as a forthcoming announcement about Hasbro toys that's going to be announced at WonderCon, and glimpses of a Frozen Empire themed event in Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed that's happening pretty soon, but it's not yet available. So, these are things that we'll probably talk about next week as they're more available and there's more details about them. We'll stick this week to talking about the premiere and the movie, but you should definitely check out Ghostbusters News to see the various media I've just talked about, and we'll check back in on the other things being teased this week, during next week. And one final thing to know before you jump into this week's episode is that if you want to see photos, videos, and the very interview clips with the cast, Jason Reitman and Gil Kennan that you're going to hear in this episode, you can head over to Ghostbusters News and Extraplasm Instagram pages and the Ghostbusters News YouTube channel to check out some of the video content. The Ghostbusters News YouTube channel probably has the longest versions of those and the widescreen versions, given that the others were cut down to squares, I think, for Instagram. So if you want to see sort of the full clips of these, they're not much longer than what we have up in the podcast, but if you want to take a look at them, you certainly can. One final thing I want to say before I jump into this episode is that I need to thank everybody who listens to Extraplasm for helping to make this a possibility. I would not have had the opportunity to probably go to the premiere and to be able to screen the movie early so that I could cover it. And it's because of the fact that you all are very supportive of me and very supportive of Jason and what he does that we were both able to go and to have an amazing experience, essentially standing next to, 8 other people behind a rope, talking to the cast and the director and the writer of this film. And so, we had a really amazing experience, and I'm so excited to share it with you this week, but it wouldn't be possible if it weren't for the fact that you all are so supportive of what we do. You're going to hear me and Jason say this over and over again throughout the episode, and thank you. But in case you don't for some reason, hear it here. Thank you so much for supporting Extraplasm and Ghostbusters News. I want to hear from you as you're watching the movie and seeing it, and you have things to share about it. So, of course, be sure that you reach out at extraplasompodcast@gmail.com or via Instagram or X at Extraplasm Podcast on Facebook, and the Extraplasm Podcast, YouTube channel. All of those are places that you can get in touch and be in contact. And I definitely want to hear from you as you get to have your piece of joy and you begin to celebrate the release of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Okay, so with those spoiler warnings and context about what's in store out of the way, and with my thank yous, provided to you, let's go now to the conversation we're going to have with Jason Fitzsimmons of Ghostbusters News, and also who was my collaborative partner for this entire trip. Joining me on Extraplasm Podcast, somebody who I've spent a lot of time with in the last week, face to face rather than just on webcam, and somebody who I have really appreciate coming on the podcast, especially after spending as much time as he has with me over the last week. Jason Fitzsimmons of Ghostbusters News. Jason, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Just arrived back from New York City. I won't spoil why we're here. Well, I guess you've already kind of mentioned it, right?
Yeah.
Just got back from the world premiere of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Yeah. We had an amazing time. It was an amazing trip, and we're going to talk about it because I wanted to obviously debrief with you and talk about this on the air and kind of go over what our experience was together. I was very grateful to be on hand to help you film things. As we were on the red carpet. And for folks who are tuning into Ghostbusters News, if you're watching the footage that Jason's posting and you're like, man, who did this terrible camera work? Yours truly. I'm sorry. but it was, thank you for the opportunity to come and do that, because it was so amazing to be standing next to you and sort of like between, Yes Have Some and you filming things and getting all these great comments and clips from, the directors and people who starred in this movie. And everybody who was on the carpet was cool. Even we got to talk to Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green, which we'll talk about. So it's pretty neat. Yeah.
It was, I don't know. I hope it's not a once in a lifetime, because I hope, Frozen Empire is a big success and they do another in the next couple of years and we're back on the red carpet again. But if that is a once in a lifetime moment, I could not imagine a better night. Like, that was like storybook for me.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that and get into that for sure. I want to talk a little more about, sort of our whole trip as a whole. And then heads up, this is the big warning now for everybody. Like, we are going to talk about the movie. We won't do it right here. We're going to get into it a little further into the podcast. So if you want to hear about the premiere and hear how that went, and then, kind of put a pause button on your podcast and then go see the movie when it comes out proper on Friday, you can totally go do that. But part of the reason Jason and I are going to talk about the movie on Wednesday is because that's when the embargo lifts for reviews and for discussion of the movie, 1. And 2, straight up, like, Jason, after you left town, I happened to go gallivanting across town with Tony Taylor Toys and his wife, Mrs. Taylor Toys. And we had a really great time wandering around, Midtown and going to places like, the Lego store. And outside the Lego store, we happened to run into Gil Kennan. And he said, point blank, I said, hey, we'll probably put an episode out on Friday because I don't want to spoil things. And he was like, why? The embargo lifts on Wednesday. Put your episode out. So anybody who's mad, who's like, hey, Jason and Jim are going to spoil things before the movie's out on Friday, like, Gil Kennan said so.
Yeah, and it's totally your choice if you want to, partake in this content today, if you are listening to it on Wednesday, or if you want to come back after you've watched Frozen Empire. Because honestly, I do feel like you should probably watch it. You should take it all in for yourself. But if you're here beforehand, hey, how you doing? Let's spoil some things.
We won't get into the spoilers for a bit. We'll give everybody a big heads up.
Oh, come on. The embargo has been lifted.
Oh, it is.
Come on now.
We
Peter
have
Venkman dies.
9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday is when the embargo is lifted. And you and I are recording right now before then. So, technically, I don't until we release it. It's safe for us to talk about it.
Yeah,
I guess. But we're releasing it obviously when the embargo is lifted. And if you're listening to the podcast, then you'll probably spend some time here listening to us talk about the premiere trip and some other very cool stuff that we did, and then we'll get into the movie. So that way you can kind of punch out and punch back in where it makes sense for you. But we don't want to ruin the experience for you if you want to go see the movie first. And I'll be honest, you should obviously listen to as much of the podcast as you want, hit pause and come back. I won't be offended. Because the movie's great and it's something that you should totally go and see that before listening to somebody tell you about things that happen in it. So let's talk about the rest of the trip for a little bit. I got into town on Tuesday and had an opportunity to kind of putz around with the folks from the Tennessee Ghostbusters, which was kind of cool. And I think you and I both mutually met up on Wednesday when you got into town.
Yeah. I got into town very early. Flew out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, early Wednesday morning. There's only an hour and a half long plane ride to New York, and I think we got together shortly after 10 o'clock, I believe.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because like you came into town and you weren't really able to check into your hotel yet, and JD Raymer, friend of the podcast and friend of Ghostbusters News, sort of was in the same boat, and so we kind of got together. As you know, you guys were exhausted and had flown, and JD had flown across the country, much I had the day before. And so it was kind of this weird day of like me being well rested, kind of, but being also on a 3-hour time difference, but also dealing with the time difference of daylight savings. So I was like, I have no idea what time it is or anything that's going on. You all were exhausted, but we were also having this like crazy adventure across the city. We got to do some pretty cool stuff. Like we went by the New York Public Library and got denied from the Rose Room first and then had to come back later. But we got to go there and see the lions, which was pretty cool. I liked that. And then we went up to Insomnia Cookies.
Oh, that was so, yeah. That was my own little thing. And like, I was the one that was like, I was pushing for that, man. I was like a child. I was like, we got to go here. And if we didn't go there, honestly, I would have been like, again, I would have been a child. I would have been like, pissy and whining the rest of the rest of the trip. But yeah, we went to Insomnia Cookies and we got the the slime puffed cookies and cream cookie, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire's official cookie.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. We cleaned them out. Like they had a dozen of those prepared, and we bought all 12.
All 12.
Which, but to be fair, we did not eat all 12 because we ended up then giving some of them to the fabulous folks who came to get us and take us down to the firehouse. Those legends at Ecto 1NJ, who like this has never happened to me in my life that I've had somebody say, like, I've never had a friend go, yeah, I'll drive in from Jersey to pick you up in the middle of like the 50s, like in the middle of Midtown and Fifth Avenue, and come just drive you somewhere else in the city because I feel like driving in from Jersey. But it wasn't just like a friend from Jersey. It was literally Ecto 1NJ that drove to grab us at like 53rd and 6th, I think. Is where they grabbed us. You know?
I mean, we patrolled pretty much the scenes where they filmed Frozen Empire, whole the Hell's Kitchen sewer dragon scenes inside one of the best replica Ecto ones out there. And again, I mean, it was kind of a thing where I know we posted some social media stuff, featured some stuff online already, but it was like one of those pinch me moments where, you're rolling through New York City inside an Ecto one, you're seeing people on the sidewalk just stop and stare, take photos, scream, who you gonna call? It really kind of set the bar high for what was to come. Again, just another memorable moment. And not only did we go through like these iconic locations, again, soon to be iconic locations from Frozen Empire, but we pulled up at Hook and Ladder 8.
Yeah. We literally had a ride from Midtown all the way to the firehouse, right? Which was just kind of like this mind-blowing thing to have happen. I'm going to say like my favorite part about that, probably two things, was before we get to the firehouse, I loved watching the New Yorker. Okay, so like I'm going to say this up front. I should just put this at the top of everything we're going to talk about. There was a part of this that for me was just like, I'm back in New York. I haven't been back in New York since 2018. And even then, like I haven't been back in New York City since I don't know when. And so like for me, being back in New York was very much like a sort of reconnecting some strings, to myself, like sort of regrounding myself and retethering back to like where I feel like I'm from. And so I was already in the mode of like being a New Yorker. And like one of the things of being a New Yorker is that when you walk down the street, you just walk. You don't really make a lot of eye contact with a lot of other people. You just kind of head where you're going. And you can kind of spot tourists versus like New Yorkers, because tourists look around and they're like really impressed by all the stuff that's happening. And New Yorkers are like, this is the shit I see every day. And so we're driving in the Ecto 1, and like we would get down some streets that like didn't have a lot of people on them. And there would be like one person walking down the road, and that person would be like kind of staring directly ahead of them, doing the New Yorker walk. They're not really looking over. And all of a sudden the car kind of rolls up slowly next to them. And you can see like they see something in their peripheral, and they kind of look over, and the car pulls up just enough that they can see it. And they like, boom, their hands go in their pockets and out come the phones. And it's like watching all these people who are like, yeah, I'm not distracted by anything. I'm walking through New York City, and I'm going to be focused on my mission. Suddenly just stop. And the other one was, you said construction workers. It wasn't just like construction workers filming. It was literally construction workers putting down their tools. It was like watching an entire group of people who were working on like a major plumbing project just be like, wrenches down, phones up. Like, it just made me so amused. I've never seen anything like that. And of course, the most ridiculous part about it was that Greg, the ecto tech, was on the loudhailer the whole time. Right. And so was Nick. Yeah. They were both of them on the loudhailer talking to the crowd. So as we're driving through intersections, Greg is on there just going like, come see Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, March 22nd, like telling people to come see the movie, and then going, on board, we have Jim Maritato of Extraplasm, Fake Maniac on the internet. Like, and I was just like, I never imagined in my life that I would be driving through New York City having somebody announce my presence and my internet handle in the middle of like an intersection. So to Greg and Nick, I have to say, this was an amazing experience. They even hooked us up with like t-shirts. Like they gave us like a snack box with Twinkies and Ecto Cooler and Cheez-Its.
Yeah. Homemade Ecto Cooler, Cheez-Its, Crunch bars. I mean, we've earned it. It was, again, it was just, I could not imagine a better experience overall. Going through the streets of New York City, getting that full, the Ghostbusters vibe, the Ghostbusters experience. And like you said, seeing everybody just kind of stop what they're doing. I mean, it was unreal. It was just unreal. I mean, there was two guys there. At one point, they were playing the song Higher and Higher, from Ghostbusters 2. And like, we had two guys just stop on the corner, and they just broke out into song. And like, they were recording us. We were recording them. It was in the moment. We were in a moment.
The other guy I really loved was there was a cop who was giving out parking tickets on the side of the road when we got closer down by the firehouse. Mm-hmm. And he just stopped giving tickets and walked away from the car he was giving a ticket to, and sort of walked alongside the Ecto as it was rolling down the street slowly. And then he just looked up at the two of us, and he threw up a peace sign. Yeah. And I was like, oh, you're done giving out parking tickets now, and now you want to flash the peace symbol at people because you saw the Ecto 1. It's just so funny. It's like a heartwarming thing on wheels that like melts the iciest exteriors. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it is like, I know a lot of people talk about, iconic imagery and stuff like that when it comes to movies. To me, bar none, like the Ecto 1, that is that piece of iconic. Like you see it, you know exactly what it is, you know where it's from, and it has that childhood nostalgia punch that you're looking for. Again, I just could not get over that voyage. I wish it would have never ended. I wish we were still in that Ecto 1, even if that meant, we haven't watched Frozen Empire yet. It was just amazing.
It was outstanding. Like, it's one of the best experiences I've like ever had as a Ghostbusters fan in New York City. Like, it was just something that I can't ever imagine was going to be something I ever have in my bucket list, right? Like, oh, I'll ride in an authentic Ecto 1 through the city and sort of get to be a guest in it and get taken on a tour. And
I have footage of you in the Ecto 1, and you've regressed to you've regressed to Tommy Pickles. Like, you were sitting there like a child. Your legs are out, your arms are up. You're like, I don't know what's happening. Like, you lost it. You lost it.
Yeah, I totally did. Like, and it was the point where I was kind of speechless and just smiling and laughing because I couldn't
and
help
also
it.
in the back seat, like for the full, like not only do we have, the Crunch Bars and the Cheez-Its and the Twinkies and the homemade Ecto Cooler, in the back, you've got Proton packs of this thing. You've got, you got the containment unit. You've got a Slimer back there.
Yeah.
A Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I mean, everywhere you turn, it's Ghostbusters. There's no mistaking. If you film inside of here, there's no mistaking where you are. Even though you can't see the exterior, everything is screaming Ghostbusters.
Yep. And it's just like, that's the funniest part about being inside of it, though, is like you want to get that footage of like you riding in the Ecto-1, but you are inside a car. So what you end up filming a lot of is everyone else looking at you.
Yeah.
Which is like, wow, okay. It's a narcissist's dream. Like that's
when I was on Instagram, like I was trying to figure out like, how am I going to record footage from inside the car and let them know where, like, let the followers know where we are, where Ghostbusters News is, where Extraplasm is. And I had this shot where I recorded my face, and then I like took the phone and like recorded just a split second of the top of the roof rack. And I mean, it got a lot of likes. People knew exactly what I was going for. But like, man, those amazing 2 days would have changed if I just botched that and dropped the phone outside. That would have just ruined the whole thing, man.
I was so nervous knowing that we were going to be filming things on the carpet that I really didn't want to shove my phone out the car window. And so thankfully, if you go and take a look at JD Raymer's Instagram, because JD has worked as like a news cameraman in his life, therefore threw caution to the wind when it came to filming out the window. If you want to see some really good footage of, sort of filmed inside the Ecto and hanging out the windows, go check out JD Raymer, JDRAIMER on Instagram, because it's definitely out there. But yeah, there was an amazing experience that I could not have imagined being any better unless we had like taken the full tour. Like we got a great ride downtown along the Frozen Empire chase route, and it was cool to see the H&M that's in the trailer and stuff, from inside the car. But it made me so much more want to go on like the Halloween tour with Ecto-1NJ. And so if you're out there listening, like keep this in mind. They will be doing tours probably around the 40th anniversary, because they'll probably be around the firehouse, and they'll likely be doing ghost tours again in Halloween. And like they're a great group of people, like Nick, Greg, Kip, who was also there, who of course did the decals for the car. He was also on hand. So like they're a great group of people who was a ton of fun to ride around with. And then we of course pulled up like royalty at the firehouse, because like all of a sudden the Ecto-1 rolls up to Hook and Ladder 8, and everyone of course like is like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and this is obviously too, just to set the stage, this is already with Hook and Ladder 8 getting attention drawn to it, because it is in the process of being frozen over. Like they're doing the whole decals and, the fake ice outside in promotion of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And this is still, everything's still kind of going up at this time, but for the most part, you have a general idea of what the finished, product, what it's going to look like, right?
Yes.
They were just kind of working on the sign.
Yeah. And so that was interesting, because like we got down there and they weren't quite finished putting together all of this decor, where they were essentially using like big pieces of carved styrofoam and, plaster or some sort of like plastic fiberglassy kind of stuff to make icicles come out of the ground. And they were vinyl wrapping basically like the entire first floor of the firehouse, right? Like, and the archway to make it look frozen over. And when we got down there, I think that's about the time they started to put plastic wrap over the Ghostbusters sign. Like, I think a lot of us were really impressed the week before when all of a sudden Hook and Ladder 8 finally got a Ghostbusters sign mounted in the correct location as if it was like movie accurate. And everybody was like, wow, it's so cool. They finally have a sign up where it's supposed to be. And I imagine that had to be like quite a feat, because that building is like, like registered as being a historic place. So any modifications you have to do to it are challenging. Right. And so not only did they have that sign up, but then they were out there like plastic wrapping the entire sign with a clear, wrap, so they could then spray additional frozen stuff on top of it. They had like a frozen tricycle out there from the trailer. They had a frozen guy who was like walking and pointing outside. And so it was like clearly in process of being transformed into a frozen firehouse, but was not quite there yet. So, but it was really cool to see for sure.
Again, too, this is our first time actually seeing all this. Well, actually, did you go prior, or was this your first time at Hook and Ladder while in New York?
No, I just went on Wednesday. Like on Tuesday, I came into the city. And so it was just like, I came in, got situated, ended up meeting up with Tennessee and chilling. But then like, I didn't really go down to the firehouse until I met up with you and JD.
Yeah, I mean, like that was a whole nother thing, because not only are we, writing this ecto, but we got the hook and ladder, which is already something that, like, it's a dream for a lot of fans, to be in front of that building.
Yeah.
I know Reitman, Gil, they said it too. Like, it's very rare for a film to have a location that, you can actually visit, and it looks like it does in the film. And not only are we getting that with the sign and the proper placement, but we've got this, like, well, I guess for 2 weeks it's going to be up, but there's a very rare moment where we can actually, we can partake in this promotion for Frozen Empire. It's only going to be like this for 2 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, it was such a cool moment to be there. And then also, not only is there other fans there because of what's going on, but randomly, Gil, Gil, director of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, he just pops in there. Just, we turn around, he's like, hey, Jason. He just shakes my hand, and he starts posing for photos. He signs the Ecto 1 replica. Like, what is even real life at this point?
Yeah. So this was kind of funny because this was like the first time that Gil showed up right behind me.
Yeah.
But not the last, like, of this trip, where, like, all of it. So the first time was at the firehouse, and JD had spotted him and had talked to him. And so JD was trying to let me know that he was there, and Gil was behind me. And so JD just began shouting in the street, Jim, because he just couldn't get the words out. I think of, like, hey, look, Gil Kennan. He just was having this moment, like, Jim. And I was like, thought there was some sort of emergency. And I turned around, I was like, oh, hey, hi, Gil, how are you? I just kind of creeped out in the moment because JD was yelling. And then it was kind of like a moment where I felt bad because, like, his spot kind of was blown up. It was like all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, Gil's here. We need photos, which, it's fine. He was very accommodating and nice to everybody.
Oh, he was. Like,
he's such a nice person. And I mean, I'm probably revisit that point throughout this conversation because the number of times that, we either talked to him on the carpet or I ran into him outside the Lego store and he was just like, hey, totally a personable and engaging, a fellow, was really amazing. He's just very down to earth. So,
and this is the director. I mean, I can't imagine that. Like, I'm just trying to picture to myself, mid 1980s, E.T., Steven Spielberg. I can't imagine at all having these interactions with him, right? Like, he went above and beyond for everybody that was there. I know, like, there was, franchises from around the world. Die Geistjäger, they were there. With their little electronic Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Mini Puff, which is so cool. And I mean, Gil posed with it. Yeah, he was just so accommodating.
Yeah, he was totally chill. I mean, and super nice. And stuck around for a few minutes, like didn't spend like the rest of the afternoon with us, which is totally fine. But like he hung out for a few minutes and like checked out what was going on, kind of stopped by to take in like how the firehouse was progressing. And there was going to be an event, kind of the next day where cast and crew were coming down. So it kind of made sense that he was kind of taking a peek at how things were progressing and coming along. But, it was just kind of this impromptu pop by that he did where we all just happened to be there. He wanted to see what was going on and then he took off. Right. But like, it was really kind of amazing. And the other thing I'll say about that was that like, I had this sense like arriving at the firehouse was almost overwhelming to a sense because of the number of like new people I suddenly met who I've talked to, like, or I've had conversations with. Like, I didn't have that experience the nights before so much, like, except for the folks from Tennessee who are awesome. Like, shout out to Philip Clark and to Jamie, his wife, and the rest of the folks from Tennessee. Like, I had a great time hanging out, actually drinking inside of a giant Statue of Liberty head at Margaritaville.
That's cool.
Which, I mean, where else would you put a bunch of Ghostbusters but inside of the head of the Statue of Liberty as a set piece that apparently is inside a restaurant at Margaritaville. But, that was kind of an intimate night of like 4 or 5 people. The firehouse became this thing where like people were walking up and saying like, oh, I listened to Extraplasm. And I was like, oh, right on. Cool. It's nice to meet you. And you and I kind of joked about this a little bit on the way down there, that like we didn't know what to expect if people would kind of recognize you from YouTube.
Yeah.
And very quickly you were like surrounded by people who were like, I want to say hi. Like,
I mean, that kind of ties in, I think, to the next day.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised with the amount of people that recognized me, and also just the kind words. Because I'm just a fan. I'm just somebody who reports on Ghostbusters news. I mean, that's the name of the site. That's all I do. But the amount of people that came up to me that day was incredible. But the next day is what I could not prepare for. I don't know if we want to dive into that just yet. I don't know if
we'll come back to it because let's sort of like we'll kind of work through our days. But like that was sort of to me like the eye-opening thing of like, oh wow, we're gonna meet a lot of people, and like
it was a taste of things to come. Definitely,
yes, yeah.
And I don't think we could prepare as to what could come in terms of our next trip, as well as what lied ahead with that premiere. But yeah, it blew away. I always assume worst case scenario because I find myself, if you think that way, hey, you're never really going to be disappointed in anything. But every instance of those 2 days while I was in New York, it seemed like it was just best case scenario every single time. And I just want to thank everybody that recognized Jim and I, everybody that came up to us, everybody that handed me a patch, a sticker, what have you. I was blown away by it. Individual fans, fan groups, the kind words, everything. I was amazed. And honestly, I was emotionally touched by it.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I felt bad because I had brought pins with me to hand out to people as I met them.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I left the firehouse on Wednesday, I was out of all my pins. And I knew I had more coming because shout out to Justin West of Strange Glow Video. He was like, I will bring you like 100 pins. Like I'll make them for you and I'll bring them for you and you'll get them, when you come to the YHS party, which is where I ended up going later on in the evening. Yep. And so when I walked into the YHS party with him, I was like, dude, I'm out. I need to reload. Like, where's my pins? So, I met so many people that were so like kind and accommodating and nice and just like kind of, it's really weird to say this, but like the firehouse began this moment of meeting people who I already know. And it's like strange to think about. It's like you're in the same boat. Like you and I had never met face to face. Like we get on webcam all the time and we talk on Instagram like all the time and we do all kinds of stuff together. Right. But like we had never like actually met face to face, even though we were supposed to sit at the same breakfast table at FanFest. But
hey,
like,
I was never told. I was there to cover the event and nobody ever told me I was good for a breakfast. So
I know, but
Sony Pictures, Wizard World, you owe me a breakfast.
You were invited to sit at the same table as me before I was Maniac on the internet. The point is that like we've been in the same place once before. We were at that event, right? Like, but we've never like actually hung out. We've just been people who hang out on the internet together. So it was like, that was the beginning of the trip with you, is like, okay, here's my friend who I get to finally meet face to face. And by the time I got to the firehouse, like I got to see Tony Taylor, right? Like who again is another person who like I talk to all the time, but I don't get to see face to face, like a whole bunch of people who have been on the podcast were like suddenly people who were in my presence, like who were right in front of me. And it was kind of awesome. Like I was just like, this is great because it's like this sort of like summit of like all these people who I really value and care about and who I spend a lot of my social time with, but who I never get to see. And so the firehouse was so important for that reason too,
Yeah. It kind of feels like, I don't know how many people out there, like do online chatting back in the day, Habbo Hotel, or I guess nowadays the common thing is, VR chat and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's like, what if you could make that reality? Like, what if that could be a reality for a day or two?
Right.
And that's what it was. It was the internet life becoming real. And it was, again, just crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts. And I saw so many people and got to meet a whole bunch of people. And like, I could run down a list, but I'm going to forget. And that's part of the thing that I will feel bad about this, that like, I met so many people whose names I'm so bad with names that I'm like, I don't know who you are, but thank you. You're very kind. Like, so if I met you and you're like, remember when you met me? And I go, no, don't take that personally. It's just, I tell my students all the time at school, like, I'm not going to remember your names for like 3 weeks. Then I'm going to hand papers back to you. And that's what I'm going to remember. It's that kinesthetic process of like saying your name and handing you something. I think I got to get better with that with the pins. Just got to say the person's name. John. Hand the pin. Okay, now it's in there. But it was so great to meet so many people. And you're right. Like I did continue the next day on Thursday. So thankfully, by the time we got there, I had more pins. But we got some cool merch too. Before we left the firehouse, I picked up some t-shirts from the folks down there at Hook and Ladder 8. I got a challenge coin. I got a patch, some pretty neat stuff. But actually, I ended up finding out that there was a premiere t-shirt that we missed out on. I think I had no idea it was there, and it wasn't available until Thursday. And I don't think anybody knew it was something you could get until the day after the premiere. And the way I found about it was that that kid Chase from On the Scene Adventures, who was broadcasting next to us and was on the Yes Have Some live stream at the premiere too, because they showed him, he got one, and his dad ended up posting a photo of it the day after the premiere. And a bunch of us were like, where did you get that awesome premiere shirt? But I got some cool swag from the firehouse. I didn't get a premiere shirt, but I got other cool stuff.
Neither. I mean, I'm in the same boat, cool swag, but no premiere shirt. So, it would have been nice to have known, but, no, I can't really, talk too bad about my experience there that day.
And I'll say this, that if you were there on Wednesday, you might have walked away with something else pretty cool and unique. I think you have one, I do, but JD was handed a piece of an icicle that was broken off of the firehouse by one of the workers there. They were taking a piece of styrofoam they had dressed up as icicles that had broken, and they kind of snapped the piece off and gave a chunk of it to JD. And he, being the awesome and gracious and kind person he is, immediately split it into 3 pieces so that we could each get one, which I was like, this is why I love you. This is why you're a good friend. And so, we each got to go home with a little piece of the firehouse. And I was thinking about this when I was packing my bag to fly back. I was like, how am I going to explain this? If TSA is like, what is this? Go through my bags. It's a chunk of styrofoam covered in fiberglass, covered in paint. Why? Well, have you been to Hook and Ladder 8 recently?
Yeah, one of the first things I saw when the images of Hook and Ladder, getting frozen over started swirling around, one of the first comments I saw was somebody saying oh man, people are going to break those off. People are going to take them. And I thought, when I'm in New York, it'd be kind of cool to maybe get a memento like that. There's no way though, right? But damn it. I guess mementos, they find a way.
Yeah, and you didn't have to deface anything in order to get it.
I just want to make that clear. We did not. First of all, do not grab that fake ice and try and break it off.
No.
Because I'm sure it will break off easy because it's styrofoam. But don't do that. Don't do that because people are working very hard to make it look good. And just don't be that person. But I'm so happy that I was able to actually take this, have this memento and not deface Hook and Ladder and, not do any of that. And kudos to that random worker there that, that hooked JD at first. And even a bigger kudos to JD for not being selfish and, hoarding that to himself and snapping it into 3 pieces.
Yeah, it was really kind of him to do. I saw other people who got stuff from the workers there who had leftover. There was leftover vinyl wrap. And so I saw somebody walking around with a big sheet of it, they'd been given off the roll. And I was like, how did you get that? And they just gave it to us, and they were getting that signed, by the cast and crew throughout the weekend. Was this big piece of vinyl wrap from the firehouse, which is a pretty unique piece. But it was really cool down there. It was really laid back on Wednesday, even though there was a lot of people around. There wasn't really anything going on programming wise, so it was just kind of people hanging out in the street. There was a fire truck parked there, and at one point the fire truck took off. They had to go on a call and get out of there. So we all get out of the way so they could leave. But it was really nice, really relaxed. The folks down at Hook and Ladder 8 were really accommodating. And I have to say this, if you go down there, take cash because they only accept cash for merchandise. But the firefighters there are super accommodating and more than happy if they're, around to take your money and to sell you the stuff you want to get. I know that for some folks,
they're also willing to take your money probably too, but they will exchange it for actual goods.
Yeah, no, they won't just take it, but they'll actually give you stuff for it. But I mean for real, I've talked to people for years who were I went down to the firehouse, but the door wasn't open. And I don't know if it was okay to knock on the side door. I'm like, yeah, no, this is completely, they were laid back about this. They expected everyone to come by and get Ghostbusters stuff from them. So, but also just really nice guys who are obviously doing a really hard job of putting out fires and keeping people safe in New York City. And so, we'll talk more about Hook and Ladder 8 in terms of going back there the next day, but I want to say thank you to the folks down there, you know, who were so gracious to deal with all of us as Ghostbusters fans and put up with us, because it's not part of the job. You know, like part of being a firefighter is not be a public relations person for a fandom. Like it's not something you have to put up with necessarily if you work in other firehouses. And they are really accommodating to us, given, you know, our love of what is essentially the exterior of their building. Right. So we end up kind of getting out of there late in the afternoon on Wednesday, I think around 3:00. We sort of said it's time to head back uptown, and you needed to check into your hotel, and JD needed to get situated in his. And then the evening for me was going off to the Yes Have Some party that they threw. I know that you, I think, had your evening full of eating pizza, running into the containment unit guys, I think, and you know, going to the Lego store. Yeah.
I ran into the guys that run the containment unit, the autograph group. So they had just arrived in New York City, and being in New York for only 2 days, I mean, I had to get pizza, and I knew that, you know, the next night was going to be the premiere, so I likely wouldn't get pizza then. So this is my best opportunity, best chance for it. So I went to, what is it there? Joe's, the Spider-Man pizza joint. Like, this was the Spider-Man place I went to. That was used like in the Tobey Maguire film. And, you know, got my full pizza, paid quite a bit, but I mean, that was a massive, massive thing. And I just went back to my hotel room, and, you know, like when you get food and you're like, I'm going to watch something, and you like a 30-minute show, right? And you eat it in like the first 5 minutes, and you're just sitting there like, oh, what's going on? I guess I'm going to keep watching this show. I got through 2 episodes of Bob's Burgers, and I was still eating pizza. If that gives you an idea of how big this pizza was. It was worth the money, and I had hardly eaten anything that day. So yeah, I was totally down for that. Amazing, great. Yeah. But
I need to say this. Like, you going to Joe's is not just like, oh, I went and got a pizza and I left. Like, going to Joe's is like a 45-minute endeavor of waiting in line.
Yeah.
Like,
I did kind of gloss over that. Like, it was a thing where I was not only was I going around New York City, there was a couple places I wanted to go into that like just like close at 7:00. And like, yeah, I find that so weird. Like, we're in the city that never sleeps, but like so many places they sleep. They close early. They close like at 7 p.m. like on a weekday, which I find crazy. Just given that it's New York City. But yeah, it was a good 45-minute wait. I got in there, got my pie. I'm kind of sad I didn't get the Sicilian. You know, grab one of those slices, but it was delectable. If you're going to New York and you're not getting the pizza from Joe's, or if you're not getting, you know, an authentic New York slice, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna admit I did not wait in line for Joe's. We actually, not knowing that that's where you had gone for pizza, and minutes after you ran into the containment unit, I ran into them in Times Square. Yeah. So they came from seeing you directly over to the Red Steps, where I was going to meet up with Tony Taylor and with his wife and with JD Raymer. And when I got over there, they were coming over to the Red Steps. So we all kind of talked for a few minutes, and we all tried to go. Matt and Tom actually headed off to the YHS party, and we said we'd see them there. And we were like, let's go over and try and get pizza, and then we'll go over to the party. And we saw the giant 45-minute line and went, no, we're not doing this. So we ended up at a different pizza place called Carnegie Pizza. It was good. It was not bad. It was, you know, I mean, it's hard, but it wasn't like, we weren't going to go to one of those places. It's like the $1.50 slice or the 99-cent slice. Like, 99 no, we're not doing
slice.
That.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not happening. I know some people are going to swear by that. If you got a 99-cent
slice and your review is anything below 4, I would not recommend it. I'm just going to say that right now.
Like, agreed.
Yeah. Or if your top review is, oh, it's good for the price. I mean,
yeah, like, okay, there's so much better pizza.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, I'm gonna have Domino's, I think.
So I did not get a whole pie. I got at that place, I got a Sicilian slice, as you just said, and I got a grandma slice, because those are things that I don't make. So I was like, what? I need to have pizza and have the range of experiences of, you know, sort of my my pizza love in New York. So those were not my first slices of pizza, to be fair. I had been spending time with my family before that. Not that everybody needs my pizza report, but like, I had eaten pizza in Connecticut. I had made pizza in New Hampshire for my parents. Like, I had a whole bunch of range of pizzas before I got to New York City. But those 2 slices were really awesome because they were things I can't get here at all. And then we headed off to the YHS party. The YHS party was kind of amazing. And I'll say that like this was the second time that Gil Kennan walked in behind me because within minutes of us arriving at the YHS party, which was at Slattery's Midtown Pub in a private space that we had upstairs, there was Gil Kennan standing right behind me, coming in right after me. And so I was like, okay, he's here again. And he's right behind me as I'm walking. So everybody obviously became really excited that Gil was there and was trying to talk with him, etc. And I kind of ducked off into the back. And then a few minutes later, Logan Kim came in with his family, and they were looking for a place to sit. And then McKenna was there with her mother. And, so the Eric Reich showed up. And so it was this room full of, Yes Have Some fans who had come to the party and who were there to celebrate the premiere. But it very quickly also became an opportunity to kind of mingle a little bit and get to talk with folks who are either in the movie or who were making the movie, etc. So it was a very cool experience. I met a lot of people at that party, gave out a lot more pins. My thing that I kept saying was kind of funny was that people were walking up to me and going, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Why? Like, is something wrong? Like, you just like, you seem really quiet and really like, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just really tired. There's a lot of people and it's a lot of social anxiety for, like 150 people in a room all crammed in, excited about something." So, but it was a really great experience. It was also an open bar. So there was quite a few happy, friendly people to interact with at the party. But I got to very quickly meet McKenna Grace and handed her a pin. I didn't want to be too cringy, but I sort of just said to her that I really appreciated the amount of care and concern that she showed for carrying on a legacy for a character that I really care about. That Egon Spengler really matters to me as a character that's mattered to me when I was a kid. And the fact that she is deeply invested in the role is something that really is important and I think is really valuable and great.
Yep.
Had an opportunity to say hi to Eric Reich very quickly and, sort of say, "Hey, how are you doing?" etc. Thank you for letting us be there. It was really great to be able to connect with all these people. Again, like to see a lot of people who I've known for years but have never met. So it was like I got this chance to see all these folks from the Yes Have Some group therapy group that I've known since probably back before Afterlife, because I wasn't at the Afterlife premiere that many people went to. And so if I got to meet you there and I said hi to you, like that meant a lot to me. I have to say that. Like I've known folks inside the Yes Have Some group that I've really became friends with throughout the pandemic. It was one of those places that I interacted with and formed a community with when we were all stuck in the house. And so for everybody who I got to meet, it was like great. I got to see Austin, from Central Oklahoma Ghostbusters, who's been on the podcast a bunch of times. I got to run into John Yerkeba face to face for the first time since Ectofest. So like I got to obviously hang out with Tony, which I mentioned earlier, but it was just a whole bunch of different people that I got to see for the first time and shake hands with and really like connect with on a one-to-one level. And so, I'm very grateful to Yes Have Some for throwing that party, for offering the opportunity for everybody to get together. I know it was a lot of work. And I know Ron Daniels was one of the folks who sponsored that party. So Ron Daniels, if you're ever listening to Extraplasm, thank you for doing that. That was a huge thing to do to help out the community. And I know that, obviously Craig, Abby, and Jacob and Ryan over at Yes Have Some all did important work and played a part in creating that. But I also know Craig did a ton of the logistical work in planning it because he talked with me a bit about it. And so, to them, like, thank you so much. That was an amazing opportunity to get together with folks. And to be honest, like, I did not want to go and forced interactions with celebrities. That was the biggest thing to me was like, be cool, like play it cool. They've come by to visit and hang out and not to be there as like zoo animals, to sort of be on display as exhibits. They've come to interact with us as fans and as people. So I really didn't want to go and force that I need to get a photo moment, with anybody because it would have been awkward and weird. But it was very cool to sort of have these very quick interactions and say, hey, it's really thank you so much for, making this fandom what it is and making the content that we all get to make. So hung out at the Yes Have Some party, good time for everybody, good time had by all. And then somewhere around midnight, I think we all started to head out of there. To be quite honest, it was pretty late. I found myself back up in Times Square somehow with a bunch of people just randomly watching the chaos reign at 1 o'clock in the morning. But I mean, in all seriousness, like I have to say, I loved being in New York. Like I loved being in the city and being there and connecting with it. And like,
Yeah.
you know, this is maybe a good place to put this because the next morning I got up and I walked myself around the block and I got myself a bagel. And one of my standards of being in New York that I love is being either in a bagel shop or a busy pizza shop, because it's where you see the efficiency of New York communication on display like nowhere else. And I loved going and getting a bagel, not just because my bagel was delicious, but because I had an interaction that went something like this. Yeah, let me get an egg bagel with 2 eggs on it and cheese and a coffee. What size? Small. Right on. Pay over there. Cool. That's the whole interaction, right? Like when I came back to California, I very quickly wanted to scream because I went to go buy a bottle of soda from the supermarket and was trapped in line behind 2 people having a conversation for 4.5 minutes about rainbow Rice Krispies because it was St. Patrick's Day and someone was buying them for their kid. And I had to listen to this entire story. And my inner New Yorker who had just come back from New York was screaming, "Why, God, why? Get back to efficient and polite, for God's sake." But New York is a place where even when there's a line, there's not a line. You know, it's like everything moves so fast and so efficient. And that like started my day on Thursday with my like super fast, efficient bagel. Made me like, I'm ready to tackle the day.
I had a scone. That's all I had. I mean, mine wasn't like, you know, classic, you know, New York or anything. It was bread and it was peanut butter. It was a peanut butter scone. 2 of my favorite things. That was it. I had that. I was ready to go. So again, I had my New York style the night before, and that pizza that was so big, man, I wrapped myself up in it like it was a blanket.
Yeah, I bet. Like a whole pizza is a lot of pizza.
I was a greasy boy Thursday morning.
So we got together when Thursday, we ended up heading off to the library again. And part of the reason we had to go back to the library is because even though we'd been there on Wednesday and seen the lions, Patience and Fortitude outside, we needed to see the Rose Room. And we found out on Wednesday that the Rose Room, which is the room where, you know, they begin their investigation in the original Ghostbusters, is only open to the public to be seen between 10 and 11. Or if you like take a tour in the afternoon or something where you have to like book it and spend like an hour on the tour of the public library at
just
1:30.
to see where they film Ghostbusters.
Yeah, just to see the one spot where you really like, I mean, obviously other people want to see things in the library. There were other things there we could have paid attention to.
There was exhibits, you know?
There was only a Gutenberg Bible in there. Like, it's not a big deal, but
yeah, it's not a big thing. It's not a big thing. They had art. They had like an Arctic exhibit, which was, I guess, kind of cool. It was kind of, you know, fitting considering why we were there in Frozen Empire.
Yeah, because obviously it was there because of Frozen Empire. It wasn't because it's there all the time.
Exactly. The Gozer exhibit too was also there. But yeah, it was really cool to kind of go in there. I've never actually I've been in the library before, but never was actually in the in the reading room or what have you. Now, a heads up for anybody that's doing that, you really can't access the same areas. Like there's still a rope, even though you're going into the room, you're still kind of, you know, tied off from getting into the areas where they were. So you really can't recreate any of the scenes or anything like that for social media.
And if you tried to, they would probably ask you to leave, right? Like, because like, even if you go at 1:30, you have more of an access to the room to walk around, but like it is still an active research space with people who are there doing work. Like, so it's a library. It's a functioning library, kind of, you know, if you walked into any library, you were like, yeah, we're going to reenact some movie scenes. They'd be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, especially, with you like slamming books down hard on top of a table or, you know, like slamming your hands down on top of a table just to like freak somebody out, or somebody like just hanging underneath a table and, you know, with a stethoscope. Like they don't got time for that. They don't want to, they don't want to, you know, be around that.
Yeah. So you're right. Like it was kind of still limited. And what I thought was interesting is that my take of that room, understanding it from 2 places, from the first movie and then of course from the video game, is that I imagine that to be one giant long room.
Yeah.
But in reality, what sits at the center of the room is like a circulation desk or a checkout desk that's like actually got like windows in it that kind of goes almost floor to ceiling. It's like a enclosed booth.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't, I don't think it goes all the way to the ceiling, but it's like an enclosed wooden space that is a series of like rooms that divides the long space of the entire Rose Room in half. And so if you've ever wondered, could you stand in one end of it and shoot at the book golem all the way on the other end of it with your proton stream? No, you can't. You actually have to be able to go through this space. But it was kind of fascinating to consider because like that set of doors or sort of rooms, if you think about the video game, is actually also in the game. It's just positioned at the back of the Rose Room. It's like they kind of took the elements of architecture that exists in the middle of the room in the video game and pushed it all the way to the back of the room. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It was kind of like a reconceptualizing of the space that exists within our universe versus what the actual public library is like,
Also, the funny thing too is the architecture inside. It is amazing. So much so that when I was watching Frozen Empire and it was supposed to be like inside the library, it was like, this isn't what it should look like. I mean, come on now. I've been to the library just today. But the actual interior of that place, I mean, it is freaking just beautiful. Like everything is just to another level.
It's a beautiful building. I mean, it's obviously an institution and is incredibly important, has tons of cultural value beyond being a filming location for us.
And best yet, we both use the washroom in it. So that's one thing. Whenever I watch the movie going forward, I'm like, you know what? You know what I did in there? Oh yeah. That sounds horrible. I don't know why I said that. But just so you know, we were there for a while. Yeah.
No, we hung out there for quite a bit. Checked out a lot of stuff that was going on over there and kind of hung around inside the Rose Room as long as we could. And then it was kind of time to go back to the firehouse because we had an inkling that there was going to be some folks who might show up down there. Apparently the Ecto Z, the big cargo van that is in the trailer and in the movie, was there. And I just want to say this really quick. I said months ago that if you were going to have a new Ecto vehicle, that the thing that would make the most sense would be a Sprinter van. I was totally right. Because that's what that is. That's a Mercedes Sprinter van. I guess that was down there before we got there. That took off before we arrived. But when we got down there, the Ecto 1NJ was back on site and was hanging out. And a lot more of the building had been decorated. They were finished with all the wrapping and strapping and doing all the things that they did.
Yeah, they had like the frozen over mannequin, like a frozen tricycle, everything kind of placed out front. And as you just said, like everything was finished when it came to the exterior.
Yeah. There was no more work being done in the building. There were now all these props outside that were around the side of the building, and the entire side of the building had been wrapped. Like when we were there the day before, the front of the building was being worked on. But by the time we got back, they'd actually wrapped the entire right side of the building going down Varick Street. And it said like Ghostbusters Frozen Empire on the side of it. So, I mean, at this point, it looked like a frozen over firehouse pretty much in the middle of the city, which was pretty cool. And there was a lot more people there. There was way more people who had come out to sort of be on hand, knowing there was likely going to be something that happened at the firehouse before the movie premiered that night.
And given that these people knew beforehand, I mean, obviously this is the dedicated fans. Like these are the fan franchises that are spreading the word around to one another. So a lot of people that know of Extraplasm podcast and ghostbustersnews.com and such. And let me tell you, sitting on the sidewalk, like right before, well, not really sitting, we were standing, but standing on the sidewalk right before we kind of crossed Right Hook and Ladder. Man, let me tell you, at that point in my life, I'm this guy who like, I'm nervous if I have to ask for like extra ketchup on my burger. Like I'm waiting in line. I'm like, I'm nervous what the cashier's going to say. I'm just a random dude. When we crossed that, I feel like I became a different person because I could not fathom the response of fellow fans because I was immediately recognized. Yeah. And I was blown away by it. I mean, all like fan franchise groups out there, like I know, like there was like Detroit and again, Die Geisterjäger, Twinport, Tennessee. Like there were so many out there, so many individual fans too. And just the amount of people that were recognizing you and I, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah. And I did joke that at one point you had been surrounded in a circle by people. And this is nothing negative. I'm not like, they surrounded you. But I mean, like everyone was very excited to talk to you and to meet you because they've like watched your videos on YouTube for a really long time and like, kind of like follow your coverage and appreciate what you do. And I kind of wandered away from you for a minute, and somebody said, "Where's Jason?" And I was like, "He's over there. He's inside the pit." They were like, "The pit," and I was like, "Yeah, the pit of love." I was like, "It's the fan pit. We're all happy to see him." I was like, "There's a benefit to being a podcaster," and somebody said, "What is it?" And I was like, "Nobody knows what I look like unless they really follow me on social media."
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, I should say that I really did appreciate it, and I was really taken back by it. And the fact that not only did people recognize me, but like I was like, people were like, "Can you sign this?" Like, what? Why? Why do you want? Again, you were mentioning it earlier when it came to some of the vinyl that people had. Like, people brought some of that vinyl up to me, and they wanted me to sign it, like from the Firehouse. And there was one guy that was like, "Hey, will you sign my Proton pack?" I was like, "What?" Like, how much did you spend on this? And you want me to like ruin it with my like grade 3 child like handwriting? Why? And I warned him. He's like, "No, just do it, just do it." And then I was handing out like patches to people, and they were telling me to sign a patch. And I don't know if you've ever, signed a patch, but it's hard. Like,
yeah,
it's hard to actually write anything on there that you can actually be like, okay, that's a G, that's a B, that's an N. Yeah, man. But again, I was just totally blown away by it. And the amount of time that we were down there, to me, it just flew by. Like it was crazy.
Yeah, I was kind of overwhelmed by like how much love and support sort of came out, from folks who were like, "Oh, I've listened to you," or "Oh, I watch all your videos." It was really very cool. And to be fair, like you got a lot more of that attention because people see you on camera. Like you are, noticeable, and they can identify you. And for me, it was like I had a few moments where I was talking with people, and they would look down at my jacket because I had a Dickies jacket on with a Extraplasm name tape on it, and I had an Extraplasm t-shirt on, and they would look down and go, "Oh, wait a minute." And I was like, "Yeah, no, that's me." Like, and so it was kind of cool to connect with so many people who are into what you're doing, and who are following and listening to the show. And so if I interacted with you down there again, like, thank you so much for saying hi, because it was really cool to be able to connect faces with names. And like some people were, I'm like, "Who are you on the internet?" They told me their real name, and I'm like, "Cool, what's your Instagram name?" Because I don't know who you are. So that was kind of fun.
And even too, like there was other content creators down there. Like I know, like from the Alabama Ghostbusters, Brock Parker, who he helps run the Bama Geeks like big podcast and such like that. There were so many other like content creators that I recognized that I was like, "Oh man!"
Experience Explorers on YouTube.
Exactly.
I was down there for sure. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That I'm sure both you and I recognize that. It was cool to meet them as well. And I'm still taken back. Like I feel like to some degree those 2 days still have not mentally registered for me because it was almost like an out of body experience. Like I went from, again, random dude who like overthinks everything to being, I don't want to get like any like weird labels, but it made me feel like quasi Z-list celebrity. And I was not ready for that, like it was just an unreal moment overall. And I just want to thank everyone who, again, that came to myself or Jim, recognize what we did or do. Because I mean, we obviously wouldn't be doing what we do without you guys, without your support. So it meant the world for us.
Yeah. And I have all these patches that I got from folks, and I like came home, and a couple of them I actually had to go and like start taking photos of them and sending them to people and going, whose is this? Because I don't know. And I feel bad because I want to say thank you and I don't know whose it is. So I've got a lot of pins and patches and things that I kind of joked that my bag was very full when I came out because I packed really tight so I wouldn't have to check a bag. And flying home was really interesting. I had so many pins in my bag that my carry-on bag didn't want to go into the luggage bin. Because there was like a lump in my suitcase now that didn't exist before. And so this woman behind me like was like, "It just needs a good shove." Like kind of just helped me give the bag a big forceful shove. She's like, "What do you got in there?" I was like, a lot of Ghostbusters pins and badges." She's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry." It sounds weird, but it is. Don't worry. So yeah, I mean, we met so many people. It was so cool. And then after a while, we were all kind of standing around, I think for probably like the better part of like an hour and a half. And folks were wondering what was going to happen. A bus pulled up, which if you go out to the Extraplasm social media, you'll see photos of this bus.
Dude.
And also, we got to climb on it. I was joking that, like, it was a giant double-decker tour bus, like, that had Slimer on the side of it. And my running joke about this was that once upon a time, Slimer used to drive the bus, but now he is the bus.
For those up until that point, like the day beforehand, I saw that freaking bus like at least 10 plus times making its way around the city. And I could not get a photo of it. Like, it was every single time it would like turn a corner. It would just turn. I could not get a clear photo. So to actually have that, not only, a photo opportunity, but to have it at the firehouse. I mean, I know I posted also like some stuff online about it there, and that thing went like semi-viral for me. Like, it was such a cool moment. I mean, I don't know. I'd trade in the Ecto 1 for the Slimer bus.
I would not, but that Ecto 1 riding experience was way cool, and I'm not giving it up for the Slimer bus. But
whoa, not the experience. I'm talking about the actual.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, not the experience. Okay, that's something totally different. I'm talking about if you gave me the choice of the Ecto 1 or double decker Slimer bus in terms of just what I can have, I may go with the bus.
I mean, the bus was pretty cool, and I have to say that I climbed above, up to the second floor of it so we could take photos. Looking down on the firehouse crowd and stuff. And then I started climbing up on top of the seats so I could get as high as I could. And then I went, if you keep doing this is going to be the part where you don't get to go to the premiere tonight because you fall off of the top of a bus. So maybe you should not. That's about when I was like, it's time to climb down. And that very moment is when Ryan Espett of the New York Ghostbusters, the New York City Ghostbusters, boarded the bus to like tell us he had pizza for us. Yeah. Which, if you want to get me to stop doing something, just tell me you have pizza.
As if those days could not get any better. Here's pizza.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got a slice of pizza from Ryan Espin, which was cool. And then all of a sudden, slowly and quietly, without any fanfare, from like the opposite side of where the bus was and where many of us were hanging out, McKenna Grace and Gil Kennan walked up. And sort of like we're headed towards the firehouse. And then Logan Kim walked up, and I actually shot like 2.5 minutes of him like hugging kids and signing things for everybody. And then after that, Ernie Hudson walked up. And then, so there was this arrival of all these folks who were part of the movie who came out and spoke to the crowd. I'm going to be honest with you. I have no idea what they said.
No, same here.
I was tucked on the side, sort of capturing them arriving, and couldn't easily get around to like the front of the crowd in order to go film it. So I ended up seeing, sort of their little speech to the crowd later on from other folks who had filmed it. But it was pretty cool. Like, they came in, signed a lot of autographs for folks and whatnot, shook hands with the crowd and etc. Made a quick appearance. And then they, kind of peaced out. They were like there to make an appearance to help promote the movie. And then they took off. But they were really kind, really awesome to all the fans they interacted with. They were a little bit of a rush because they obviously had to go get ready to go to a premiere.
Yeah, and I mean, prior to that morning, like, they were already doing like the media junkets and all that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that folks who stood outside of 1515 Broadway, including JD, got really good opportunities for autographs because the entire cast was down there for CBS Morning News. At like 9 o'clock in the morning. So I understand JD got like Paul Rudd, I think, signed and whatnot down there. And, like Paul Rudd didn't show up at the firehouse, but the few people did. And the folks who did were incredibly kind and really welcoming to the fans who were there. And then they had to leave at a certain point because they had to go get ready for meeting up for later on for the premiere. And I think that's about the point where you and I looked at each other and we're like, we should get out of here too. Like, we have to also check in for the premiere.
That's the thing. Like, we had to be there. I think, what was it, for like 5 p.m. And at that time it was getting close to around 3 o'clock or so. We were down there for 3 hours or so, a little bit longer than that. But yeah, we had a boot. We had to get ready.
Yeah. So fast forward a little bit, because, we kind of went back to our respective hotels, got prepped, and then met back up. We got on the train, headed over to Lincoln Center, and met up at the AMC and saw the folks from Yes Have Some and AJ Quick from GB Fans, who also had, sort of social media or influencer podcast, whatever you want to call it, access. And so we met up with them for a bit and chatted with them in the lobby. And before you knew it, we had some credentials and we were moving into a fan media space. It was really fascinating to me. Like, I mean, I don't think you or I really knew what to expect going into this, because we knew we had some sort of media access, but we didn't necessarily know if we were like in with press or if we were in with something else for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like we knew we had sort of like a GB fan area that was going to be sort of set aside that would be out near, like the Ecto 1, but we didn't really have like a firm grasp of like, would we have an opportunity to interview people? Were we just going to be able to like film people as they walked by? And then I think like, I don't know about you, but I think our dreams came true.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I always assume like worst case scenario. But Sony here, kudos to Eric Reich, whoever organized this map, when it comes to the overall layout, because they put us in the single best spot. Like not only were we press, we were in front of the press, like the actual like Entertainment Tonight, everybody that would cover this, we got first dibs, which is insane to me. So
it was crazy. Yeah. Like they were coming into the premiere, walking past the cars. Their first media interaction was with like us and Yes Have Some and, the On the Scene Adventures folks. Right. And like, that's who was there. There were 3 different people, like different entities to talk to. And we were behind a black rope, right? Like essentially on the left side as they came in. And then after they would walk past us, they were walking into a room full of like, 50 at least photographers, all with, their telephoto lenses and their like flashing bulbs, all like shouting like, over here, look right, look left. Like, and so we were just kind of like this chill spot to stop and have a conversation before any of that. Yeah. And it was so vastly different than if we had been like press. Do you know what I mean? Like we wouldn't have had the same level of kind of access if we'd been in that big room with everybody else. It was very different.
It blew my mind with the respect that like one of the first questions I was asked when we got stationed in there was from one of the gentlemen or from one of the individuals that look over like Finn Wolfhard. And it was like, hey, would you like to interview Finn Wolfhard? Like, what's that now? What's going on? What's actually kind of funny is like, he said that and I didn't hear who he said. So I was like, who? And he's like, the curly haired kid from Stranger Things.
For Stranger Things.
Like, you don't have to really tell him. I just didn't hear the name. Yeah, you mean Dustin? He's here? But yeah, like it was such a chill environment. I mean, it did get a little more chaotic as the night kind of continued, went on.
Sure.
But nothing at all compared to what the actual press area was like, where again, you had 50 plus people just shouting commands at the actors. Us, it was just like, hey, you want to chat? That's pretty much what it was.
And it was like, we got 2 to 3 minutes with each of the people that we talked to, so it was kind of like, you got at least 2 questions in and an opportunity to chat for a moment. And, people will see this when they look at the coverage. You did the talking with these folks. Like we brainstormed the questions and I did the filming. Right. And then, but like we had a conversation the night before where you were very generous to say like, hey, do you want an opportunity to ask questions and sort of hand it off back and forth? And on the one hand, like, this was your show. You were nice enough to invite me to have me come along and help out. It was your name on the carpet, not mine, right? It's like Ghostbusters News.
Which, by the way, sign. I did take the sign. I mean,
nice.
Yeah. It was just a sheet of paper that had Ghostbusters News printed on it. But it's a memento.
But the other part of this, I think, was a good decision about that was that like, because it became more hectic later on, when like they were bringing in 2 celebrities at the same time and sort of having them talk to one group and then have them switch with the other. If we had been handing off mics, I think that it would have been a lot more confusing and there would have been more opportunities for screw up. So I think like we worked really well by kind of going like, this is what you're going to do. This is what I'm going to do. And we're going to just both try and do it well. But I was stoked that like we had brainstormed questions ahead of time because it was like the night before you and I were sitting there going like, well, what's going to happen? Like, do we need to have questions? Like, are they going to let us interview them? We didn't really know.
And I don't want to sound like Sony or Ghost Corps, they're all over the place when it comes to their configurations or their planning. I just know how these events are. Like I know that things can change, things can get rearranged. So
absolutely.
Until you're in the moment, you don't really know 100% for sure. That's at least my history of it. Because again, when it comes to something this big, a movie premiere, things can change on a dime, like out of nowhere. So I didn't really know what was happening until we were actually in that spot. I had an inkling, but until we actually were there behind that rope with the Ghostbusters News name and, next to AJ Quick of GB Fans and Yes Have Some podcast and so on and so forth, Yeah, I didn't really believe it until that point.
Yeah, it was kind of wild, like that. I didn't really know what it would be either. And I agree. Like, I mean, look, this is in no way negative, but like the next day after the premiere, or rather Saturday, there was an event down at the Firehouse again for FDNY, and the Ecto 1 was advertised as a thing that was going to be there. And they found out, that morning, like, nope, it's not going to be able to make it. Like, Sony can't come out and do it. And I don't know why, but I imagine it probably had something to do with the fact that you probably have to truck that car like through the St. Patrick's Day parade to get it down there. Like, I don't really know how you'd move it from Lincoln Center area to, down to Tribeca without having to deal with some of that madness. But anything literally can change. I mean, like, we were, as much as it's kind of funny to think about it, like, we spent some time waiting around because we were waiting on one additional person to show up who was not necessarily on schedule, right? Like, we were waiting for Bill Murray, and that completely could have changed the way that things went with that event.
I love the fact that Bill Murray being late, I mean, really altered everyone's life. Like, everybody that was there that night, like, delayed the entire film and everything. I mean, but that's Bill Murray though. That's part of the charm.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And we also got baptized. There's video of that, where we were anointed by Bill Murray with his bottle of water. As he came running in. I
should touch on that. Okay. Because like so many people, if you haven't seen it, like I know it's up on the Extraplasm Instagram page. A lot of people kind of voiced their opinion when they saw Bill Murray make his entrance and just throw water on us. He threw water actually on his co-stars. Like, I don't know how many bottles this man had and where he was keeping them, but he just kept throwing water at people. And like, oh man, why you got to be so angry? You got to why? No, I mean, I've got a Bill Murray story now. Like, I legit have a Bill Murray story. He doused me with water along with many other people. The same water that doused me came from the same bottle that may have doused Paul Rudd. That's insane to me.
Yeah.
So I cannot be mad. I would rather
I didn't care at all.
Exactly. I'd rather have that than Bill Murray stopping the chat. He looks at the title of the site, Ghostbusters News, and then just like razzes on me for 30 seconds. Like, because ain't no way he's going to take Ghostbusters News seriously. There's the likelihood of him taking Entertainment Tonight seriously is probably, not the best. So the fact that we can be, anointed by Bill Murray, that was awesome.
I thought that his arrival was, as much as it was delayed, it was exactly what you kind of expected, even though you didn't know what to expect. It's a weird sentence to say, but like, I mean, he didn't use the entrance way. He ran around the crowd and came through a side curtain area and then emerged and began showering everybody with water. He was also
dousing that crowd in water too. You know, like it was the Hurricane.
It's a big water bottle, I guess. It's just, it was the arrival of the Hurricane. You're right. But I mean, that came later on. There was a lot of folks we talked to before that. Some of the folks we got to talk with Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green first, right? They kind of came through. The
indie god and WWE superstar. We got the kind of the power couple of wrestling, the real power couple. Chelsea last week on Raw, she wore like the wrestling gear that was Ghostbuster themed, kind of picking up for Matt Cardona on national television. And it was an honor. I mean, I'm a huge wrestling fan, so the fact that not only like we just found out that we're going to do press, not only we're going to do press, we're going to do it right. Behind the Ecto 1. Not only that, when I am about to take my spot, who do I see? Matt Cardona, Chelsea Green. I mean, this was like, steak and shrimp in the same dinner. It blew me away. I think I've said that a couple times, but these 2 days, the 48 hours that I was there, it just continued to like somehow top itself over and over again.
Well, let's go ahead and take a listen real quick to that conversation we had with Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green.
Matt Cardona, Chelsea Green. I know you're like a lifelong Ghostbusters fan.
Right.
You're here. Is this your first actual Ghostbusters premiere you've been to?
It is my first. I think it's my first movie premiere for any movie. So definitely my first Ghostbusters one. But I'm pumped. She's pumped. We're excited.
That's awesome. Now, I'm actually quite curious here. Chelsea, were you a fan of Ghostbusters, or was this something that maybe Matt introduced you to?
Take a wild guess.
Yeah.
I actually, he made me go see the last movie in Vegas when we were on the road with Impact, and I loved it. And I didn't know what to expect, so now I am a fan. But he has kind of been playing with his proton pack for the last 7 years.
Well, when we first started dating, I had a little housewarming party, and I caught her upstairs, little Hornswoggle, who was naked wearing my proton pack, and she was just taking pictures with them and selfies. I'm like, this is the girl of my dreams, I think. If she's cool with this, I think I'm going to have to marry this one.
That's awesome. Now, you being, again, lifelong Ghostbusters fan, I got to ask, the new movie, it looks a little different. It seems kind of influenced by the animated series a little bit. What are you hoping to get out of this one here? What are you looking to see?
I'm walking in and just with no expectations. I know it's going to be awesome, right? I'm not going to be, I hope it's this, I hope it's that. I just want to have fun tonight. We're going to have a blast. And then I'm going to buy all the merchandise afterwards. So it's going to be great. Not great for my wallet, not great for her wallet, but great for me. Great for my collection, my toy room.
So what was your biggest takeaway from talking with Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green? Like, what did you think about that interaction you had with them?
Well, for me, probably the biggest thing is actually being in front of Matt Cardona finally, because I've seen him wrestle before, but over the years, we have chatted quite a few times online, in private messages, but also he's become a pretty big supporter of Ghostbusters news because I do, stories on Matt Cardona. When he does something Ghostbusters related last year at GCW Homecoming, he came out in the Ecto one, New Jersey, and he came out of that. He was dressed as a Ghostbuster. So obviously I've covered his stuff for years, and whenever I do, he features it. Heck, even last week when I featured the Chelsea Green on Monday Night Raw, not on Raw, but on Main Event, Chelsea Green and Matt, they both retweeted that. They shared it through. So I think the fact that we've had this dialogue online for so long, finally being able to, meet face to face, that was probably the coolest moment. And also, I just want to say, I've been a huge fan also of Chelsea Green for years. Not to make it sound creepy, but she's probably one of my all-time favorite female performers in wrestling. I love her hot mess gimmick and everything. Her theme song is amazing. Her entrance is fantastic. Again, as a wrestling fan, I could not think of any better way to start off this press coverage.
Yeah, it was really cool to start out with them. And, I think that what was awesome about it was that they originally had kind of walked through and we didn't really get a chance to say hey, can we chat with you, at first, because we didn't realize that they were beginning to walk through, that they were going to start having folks come into the, area.
Yeah.
And so when you asked them, hey, can I talk to you real quick? They're we're going to go through and then we'll come back. So they took photos, went into the photo room and then circled back just to talk with you. Cause he kind of knew who you were, which was awesome. This also began my terrible thing. It's either the terrible thing or the okay thing. I haven't decided yet, but I don't know what it was, but after we turned the camera off, that was when I decided was my moment for my one-liner, I guess, with each person that we talked to. And so if everybody remembered you positively, I'll be the guy they remembered as being weird, especially because I gave them a pin right afterwards. And so with Matt, I said, I don't even remember if you recall this, but I said, Matt, I just wanted to let you know you're part of a really exclusive club with me and Jason. And he said, well, what's that? And I said, you own a Mattel library, lady, and so do we.
Yeah.
and Chelsea Green looked at us and went, oh my God.
What's even happening here?
I have to imagine that he walked away from us going, how does that guy know that I have a library lady?
Well, he's made it pretty apparent, but I feel like he's more perplexed over the fact that now his library lady is even less valuable. He's sitting there thinking what in the world? I thought there was only 6 of these. There's 2 more?
Yeah. Wait, these guys have them too? Shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were super nice and super engaging. I really liked meeting them. They were a lot of fun. And then next we got to meet Greg Miller, right? Who, among other things, I know him, as he's an internet personality and what have you, but the thing I know him from most Ghostbusters related is that he was the voice of Nameless in Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. So to me, that was kind of a really fun moment because as we all know, I've played over 60 days of Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed in my life. So that was a fun conversation. And we can go ahead and take a listen to that real quick.
Greg Miller, first and foremost, is this your very first Ghostbusters premiere?
This is my first movie premiere, so I am in completely uncharted waters for me. 17 years covering video games. You can tell me I'm going to E3 tomorrow. I know exactly what to do. I have had no idea what to do today. It has been a bumbling fool of do I go early? Do I go here? When do I actually show up? So I think I'm doing okay.
I mean, you're looking the part. You're looking great. Love the
Thank you.
Ecto-1 pin.
Thank you.
Now, with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, the style, the movie, it looks like it kind of takes a little bit of influence from the animated series, The Real Ghostbusters, which, of course, I mean, you're a fan of, I'm a fan of. What are you hoping out of this film overall?
I mean, I hope this really sets the course for where Ghostbusters is going as a franchise. Afterlife was so great as a reset point, for old folks like us. Bring on a new generation of fans to get into it, and this really should be the blueprint for where we go from here. And I love the fact they keep talking about, it's Real Ghostbusters influenced, inspired, right? Because for so many of us, I think that was Ghostbusters for a long time, right? And so that episode to episode, they're just going out on jobs. I love that, and I want that. It doesn't have to be about Gozer. Let's see where we can take these people.
And a little known fact, well, I shouldn't say a little known fact, but you played Nameless in Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. You did a phenomenal job in that. I just want to pitch the idea that Nameless should make a return in an upcoming film, maybe an animated series. Would you be up for Nameless being, I don't know, maybe in Ghostbusters 5, the next installment?
Jason and Gil, you are sitting on an untapped gold mine. It's just a jar with purple goo in it at this point, right? That can be Nameless. That can be the character. That could be a Funko Pop. That could be an action figure. That could be an animated series. And Ghost Corps would be fools not to use it.
So what was your feeling on meeting Greg? He was super personable, I thought, and super affable, but what did you think?
Well, I mean, Greg's another guy where I've talked to for years online, very similar to Matt Cardona. And I'm not going to get emotional. I'm not going to get all right. So Greg Miller is probably one of the biggest. I know Greg, some people love him, some don't. A lot of people love the guy. I mean, if you don't love him, you're wrong. But Greg Miller is probably one of the big reasons that Ghostbusters News exists. Many years ago, when there was promotion for Ghostbusters, the video game, the 2009 game, he did an interview with Dan Aykroyd, and he did it for IGN.com. And it was something where I saw that, and shortly thereafter, maybe a couple months later, that's when I started up GhostbustersNews.com. And it was just this really weird moment where I was doing something else. I was actually doing a wrestling website, kind of tying it back to Matt Cardona. But I thought, let's have a go at a Ghostbusters site. And it was really Greg Miller's coverage of that really kind of made me think maybe I could make a go of this. Maybe I could do something with it. So on the same night, not only to meet Greg Miller, but an hour later to interview Dan Aykroyd like Greg Miller did 15 years ago. It was almost like a weird prophecy was being fulfilled that night. It was beyond cool for me. And Greg Miller was accommodating. He was great. Such an animated fella, such an animated character. I'm a huge fan of Greg's, all of his content, kind of funny, does a phenomenal job for that. He's an entrepreneur. I cannot say enough good things about Greg Miller.
Yeah, I was excited that he was there, and that, somebody who worked on Spirits Unleashed was sort of represented in the folks who came through. I'm not really sure how much other folks who worked on that video game had an opportunity to be involved in the premiere. And so to sort of see somebody who was there as one of the cast members from the game, I thought was pretty cool and interesting.
In my opinion, I don't really know the inside story, but I wish all of Ilphonic should have been there. Because to me, they made one of the best forms of Ghostbusters of anything, over the last, decade. Spirits Unleashed is a fantastic game, and it continues to build. I cannot wait for the Frozen Empire DLC. And again, as we were just saying with Greg Miller there, did a great job as Nameless. Fantastic job as Nameless in the last big DLC.
Yeah, and not to get into spoilers yet, but let's not forget that the folks at Ilphonic have really pioneered the idea of possessing trash bags.
Yeah.
But, I thought that was a really fun conversation we got to have with Greg. And then I think we had a little bit of a break for a few minutes where we didn't see anybody, for a couple of moments. And then we started to see some folks come through who were additional kind of influencers. The cast of Impractical Jokers walked by. And while we didn't interview them, I did stop Brian Quinn because he was, I've listened to Tell Him Steve Dave, his podcast that he's been on with Brian Johnson and Walt Flanagan for a long time as part of the Smodcast network and Kevin Smith's podcasting network. I've listened to them for years, and then I kind of fell off of it, but I've also appreciated Brian Quinn as part of Impractical Jokers. And he was fascinated with the Ecto One. Like, they were trying to get him to leave the red carpet area and go in to take photos. And he kept running back to like look inside the windows. And he was like, I just want to get inside it and ride in it. And so I stopped him. And I was like, you need to get in touch with Ecto 1NJ. Like, you need to get a ride. And if you recall, Chris Sorrentino, aka Pizzaplasm, is actually, he works as like a production assistant and an artist on Impractical Jokers. And I was like, you got to talk to Chris Sorrentino. And Brian Quinn was like, you know Sorrentino? And I was like, yes. And he goes, how do you know him? I was like, he's been on my podcast. Like,
yeah.
So I was standing on the red carpet now negotiating situations for Ecto 1NJ to take TV stars on tours by accident, which was kind of fun. But we didn't get an interview with Brian Quinn. I don't know why we didn't. We should have. Would have been kind of fun to put that on video. But after that is when we started to see like more folks come in who we were familiar with as, you know, cast and crew and what have you for the movie. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the first person we ended up talking to is, am I wrong, is Gil Kennan, right?
Yeah, I believe Gil was among the first that he approached us, and again, they're just so personable, coming up. Like, I don't know, he felt like an old college buddy or something like that. Like, you know, like, hey, how you doing? Isn't this just crazy? Hasn't today been crazy?
Yeah, I want to drop the clip in here so people can hear it, because like, I think if you've never talked to Gil Kennan, like what you're about to hear is what, I mean, like, obviously like recorded him talking to him, but like you would think that this is like just a person having a conversation with you as opposed to somebody who's on the red carpet, like giving you, you know, here is the mass marketed approved statement that I'm going to deliver to you. So let's take a listen real quick to, you know, what Gil Kennan had to say on the red carpet.
Totally crazy.
It's been insane.
Yeah.
It has been insane.
I mean, I wasn't around for Afterlife's New York premiere because I had a movie premiering that same day in London. So it was a weird collapsing of the universe and time and space. But I heard it was really cool. I just can't believe, is this straight?
It's straight.
Okay, it feels good. I can't believe what we experienced in this city today. It's been really special. I can only imagine, like, you know, you guys have been covering this for how many years now?
Right, for Ghostbusters News, 15 years this year.
Yeah, I mean, this feels, for me as a fan, this feels like a moment. I'm pretty excited, and I'm also like psyched that our studio feels like they're behind us and they want Ghostbusters to succeed, which is a nice feeling.
Now, I've got to ask, going into Frozen Empire, what kind of hurdles did you face regarding, I mean, like Afterlife, it was a love letter to fans. This one, you're back, but it seems like it has a slightly different tone to it while still keeping that original recipe. What hurdles did you face with that?
I mean, it's really the opportunities that we had in front of us, because Afterlife was an experience of rekindling. We had to stoke the embers and build a fire, and we were able to let that fire rage with this movie. So it was really about figuring out, we knew we were coming back to New York City, we knew it was going to be the ghost-busting adventure with a scope and scale and stakes that we felt like the franchise was ready for and that us fans were ready for. It was about figuring out how to contain all of that potential, all that enthusiasm, excitement into a tidy 2-hour package. So that was the challenge. Like, how do we make all of our, 40 years worth of pent up potential a movie and still leave fuel in the tank for the next one, et cetera, et cetera.
I hear there's plans for a next one. Anything you can say on that?
I mean, look, I want it as much as you do. And it's really about us getting the word out, which I think we're trying, getting audiences to show up in a big way, which, I'm really hoping happens next week. And this is a business. The studios listen to fans and they listen to box office. And so I'm really hoping we can make lots more of these.
My biggest takeaway from the conversation with him was just how personable he was and how excited he was for fandom. Do you know what I mean? That he was sort of talking about that idea of the studio's behind us, everything's happening. You can look around us. We're in New York. You get a real sense that he really appreciates the fandom, and that's something that not all directors, obviously directors want to like their fans, but fans can be annoying. right? They can be really cringy. And he's very supportive. Like he's very engaged in like how active we are, and excited about it. What was your takeaway from a conversation with him?
Again, just how easily approachable he is, and also just the fact that I don't know if it's a good sign that he remembers my name, because I feel like I'm on like some kind of like Sony list somewhere of like that he did something bad 2 years ago, but no, he's aware, and to have the director, multi-million-dollar film, the reason we're here talking right now, to approach me by name, I mean, that's to me, that's incredible. And if you could tell like 3-year-old Jason with, the proton pack his mother made for him back in the day, back in 87, that one day he'd meet the Ghostbusters director. I mean, probably Jason really wouldn't care. 3-year-old Jason wouldn't care because he wouldn't know what a director was. But the fact that he would actually have a real conversation. And like you said, it wasn't this like pre-prepared list of, okay, this is what I'm going to, this is verbiage I'm going to say. It was real. And I respect the hell out of Gil. And I really appreciate his interactions with the fans, his interactions also with other press that I saw while I was there. He's a very, I get the vibe he's a very genuine individual.
Yeah. That's my takeaway as well. I mean, it's kind of funny, but like when I was approaching him sort of after he was done talking, I made this one-liner joke to him. And I said, this is from Extraplasm podcast. It's the podcast that, covers you filming yourself outside your own billboards. Right. And I said, hope we get to see more movies if I get to do more of that. Like, and it's kind of funny to think about it, but like he's a guy who like his billboards came out in LA and he drove around taking photos in front of them and posting about it, and saying like, am I the kind of director who would post videos of himself? Like, yeah, I am, because I'm so excited about what I'm doing, and I really value that we had somebody helming a Ghostbusters movie who's got his heart in it, like who's really cares about whether or not fans are having a good time, and sees that as valuable and doesn't just see it as, we need audience to come out and watch it, but that also that there's support from the fans in the studio for it. So I'm so glad we got to talk with him. And again, I got to run into him again at the Lego store a couple days later, rather, and chat with him again. And he said, I'll absolutely go out and put the podcast out on Wednesday. But, it was just, it's kind of this weird thing. Like I came into the premiere, and I talked with you a bit about this off the air, that like feeling like if I were going to approach Jason Reitman before Afterlife, I would have felt awkward being like, hi, Jason. You know what I mean? Not because there's anything wrong with him, but like Jason's totally fine and personable too. But like I had a different relationship almost in a sense with the fandom, in a way where it was like, I'm looking at you in a way of like revering you, and you're in a way almost, a legend, you know what I'm saying? And like coming out of that conversation with each of them at this event was like, oh no, like you're personable, like you're somebody who I feel like I can engage as another person who's very kind and giving with your time. And so it was really awesome. Like I really enjoyed the conversation we got to have with him. And then of course we did get to talk with Jason Reitman as well. So let's take a listen to that real quick.
So within the prime Ghostbusters film canon, up to this point, everything has been Reitman directed. First by your father, Ivan, then you took over the reins in Afterlife, and now with Frozen Empire, you're handing the keys over to Gil Kinnan. How excited are you for this somewhat change of guard?
I'm really proud to be the third director in the Ghostbusters franchise, and I know Gil's just as proud to be the fourth. I've never felt like Ghostbusters belonged to me. And I'm thinking in many ways my father probably felt the same way. Ghostbusters belongs to everybody. And that's the wonderful thing about it. That's what happens when you have a phenomenon. And I was very lucky to get behind the wheel of Ecto 1. And I could not trust Gil Kinnan more as the guy behind the wheel now. It's a thrill to be handed the proton pack, and it's an honor to hand it off to someone you love.
When it comes to Frozen Empire, what element do you think fans should most be excited for? And regarding the future of the franchise, was there anything that Ivan may have wanted to see that has yet come to fruition?
You know, what my father wanted was just more ghost-busting stories. What I'm really excited about this movie is that it's back in Manhattan with an all-new villain, all-new storyline, all-new characters, and it almost reminds me of what it was like to watch real Ghostbusters as a kid, where you get these new storylines, you never know where the Ghostbusters are going to go next.
Now, a conversation with Jason, I think, was interesting because like it came on the heels of him talking with that young kid next to us, Chase, from on the scene Adventures. And
yeah,
I don't know if you got to take in any of that. Did you get to watch him answer questions to that kid?
I did. Yeah. I took some snapshots while it was happening. I think I may have recorded a video or so, but
yeah,
it was pretty fantastic.
I actually shot the reverse angle of that and sent it to them so they could use it in their coverage. And I thought he was so kind to this little kid. You know, like this kid was sort of getting through questions and kind of flubbing them in the moment. And he was asking about, you know, what it's like to work with your dad and stuff. And like Jason just engaged this kid like so well and was so kind to him. And then he talked to us and I was almost intimidated at first again, like in concept, in sort of contrast to talking to Gil. I was like, oh my God, is it Jason Reitman? Like,
yeah. It was weird for me because, and if Jason, if somehow you're listening to this, I apologize. His was one of the ones that I kind of stumbled a bit through just because for like it was, you know, we had Yes Have Some Us, then we had Chase down there, and he went from YHS to Chase, and then he went to us, and I thought he was gonna like he had another commitment because we were talking to someone else at the time, so he wasn't gonna hit us, and then all of a sudden he just turns around and says, "Oh hey," you know, and just he approaches, and it kind of caught me off guard a little bit there. I had to double check and think like, oh God, what are my questions? You're a director. Let's go to those go-to questions. So, and that's the thing too, is in this moment, you know, a lot of people are probably like, you know, oh, why didn't you ask them this or that? The thing of a red carpet is they need to get in and get out AS. Like they have other places to be, other places to go. So I don't want to ask them a question where it's like, okay, this is going to be like a 5-minute long answer. You know, I'm not looking for, you know, the meaning of life or anything with these questions. It's very much, you know, hey, what's this? Yes or no, and why? Very simplistic form. And, you know, Jason, he humored us with the answers. I shouldn't say humored us, but, you know, he answered them, did a great job. I feel like, honestly, our talk with both Jason and Gil, I think that combo, I uploaded them on YouTube, and I know we've listened to them here. But I feel like that combo between Jason and Gil, I think, are two of the strongest that we had. And I just really enjoyed, again, just talking to both Jason and Gil.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking with them both too. And I will say that I think that Jason comes across as a very intensely active listener. Like when you ask him a question, he's looking you like directly in the face, like as you're kind of asking it. If you look even at the footage we shot with him, he's kind of like looking directly at you, you know, kind of like intensely listening to you. And then he offers up a great response. But in the moment, I think that was kind of part of what like caught us off guard, was we went from like this very like laid back interaction with Gil to like this very intense listening, you know, like that was happening, where he's like looking at you very directly in the face as you're talking, and you're like, oh God, I don't want to screw this up. You know? And then like, as soon as we were done talking to him, I was like, Jason, I just want to say thank you. And I wanted to give you this from Extraplasm Podcast. And I handed him a pin. And he like, you know, got a smile on his face, was like, oh, thank you. That's so cool. Like, and so it was like one of those moments where like you go through these like emotions, where I think when you're asking questions of people who you really revere and respect.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't want to screw it up, right? Like you don't want to be the guy who is like, oh my God, I'm the moron who asked the idiot question that like they're going to remember, you know, like you have to remember also like there's so much that's going to go on that night that it's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
you know,
they're not going to remember one little question or one little flub or anything like that.
Right. And I think that like once we kind of embraced that a little bit, I think it became a little bit easier in some sense. Do you know who I felt was totally easy to talk to and I just wanted to talk to for like 10 more minutes? Carrie Coon.
Oh, Carrie Coon was fantastic. She was amazing. I feel like she chirped us a little bit there when she was talking about like trying to like, you know, proton packs, they aren't real. Didn't know if you knew that. Everybody has like their own swagger and style. I'm pretty sure you guys, you've practiced a lot more than I have.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny.
Let's take a listen to that real quick.
All right, so when it comes to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, you're back with Paul Rudd, we got Callie, we got Gary Gruberson there. When it comes to a movie like Ghostbusters, that's kind of over the top, and then you've got this relationship in it that's kind of grounded more so in reality. How's that balance? Like, is that hard to kind of like find there?
I think it's in the writing, and I'm not sure that that Paul and I restrain ourselves so much that we don't go over the top sometimes. Maybe a little too goofy sometimes, but I love that there's family at the center of it. I think that just grounds the story, as you pointed out very rightly. And then you have all the other craziness going on, and I think it's just a really relatable thing to be dealing with teenagers while you're busting ghosts. You know, doing laundry while you slide down a fire pole. I love that touch. I love the juxtaposition.
And also, when it comes to the character of Callie, in Afterlife, I mean, you had your role, you know, you became the, I guess, the gatekeeper for that one there. Now you're picking up the proton pack, you're picking up the neutron one, you're becoming a Ghostbuster. What did that mean to you?
I honestly haven't quite wrapped my head around it. It's such an iconic moment to pick up a proton pack, and then the thing that I wasn't prepared for was that, of course, they're not real. I don't know if you guys know this, but they're not real. And so you have to pantomime how to do it. And I realized that everybody has their own style of using a proton pack. You've probably practiced it more than me. And so it really took a lot of like, oh, well, where is the energy coming from? And what do you do? And like watching the OGs and asking them for advice and, you know, don't do too much, you know what I mean? So that was kind of the big learning curve for it. But it's incredible. And it hasn't really sunk in, honestly. I don't know that it ever will.
I don't know about you, but like one of the things that was catching me so off guard when I talked to Carrie Coon, and you can see it in the footage, is that like most people, you know, they talk to you. You're the interviewer, right? Like, so there's not that much eye contact necessarily with me or with the camera because they're engaging you and you have the microphone. But Carrie Coon, like, either as a seasoned person who's done interviews for television for years or whatever, she was engaging both of us. She like looked at you and then she looked right in the camera, but like was talking. I was like, she's looking right at me, except I was looking at the screen. And I was like, no, she's not.
Yeah,
she's looking at the camera.
And the other thing with Carrie Coon too is like I was taking stills for the website, like for the YouTube channel and everything, like for the thumbnail. I was like, okay, what would be the best? And I took like 5 different. And they were just that. Each one was vastly different. Like she was so expressive. Well, at the same time, always keeping this, you know, joyous smile on the red carpet or black carpet, I guess it was. Yeah, she was amazing. I know I've been saying amazing a lot during this podcast, but that's how I have to convey, you know, those 2 days, especially this premiere. Carrie Coon was like just a pure and utter delight.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most articulate people we spoke to, without question.
There were a number of individuals, like, I mean, pretty much everybody we've kind of talked about, that I felt my IQ drop in speaking with them, because I was like, man, like Carrie Coon, like every other sentence, she was like, I felt like I need to get like a dictionary out. You know, she was great. She was so great.
Yeah, no, I felt that she really brought her A game to, you know, talking with, you know, with us, with the press, etc. But like, she was just so personable. And I loved the notion that she's like thinking about things like, you know, laundry going on at the firehouse. Like,
yeah,
you know, just like I sat there afterwards when she walked away and I was like, I wish I had 10 more minutes.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, just to talk to her, because, and this is not to like be negative in any way about Afterlife, but like her character is the daughter of Egon Spengler, but for some reason, like I obviously related more to the kids who are ghostbusting throughout that movie because they're the new generation of Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm. And to sort of watch her step in the role of being a Ghostbuster in this new movie, after having had that conversation with her, like walking into a theater and watching that made me so much more go like, God, I wish I had 15 more minutes to talk with her about everything I just saw, because, you know, there's a different, it's not that she's a different character in this movie, but she's got a different role in this movie than she did in the last one. She's not just mom, you know, she's also now a Ghostbuster, and it makes it very cool. So I really enjoyed that conversation with her. And the other person who I thought was really just a trip to talk to was Emily Allen Lind. You know, she was really engaging. Let's take a listen to that really quick.
Thus far, when it comes to all the marketing, everything, we have not seen your character just yet. Is there anything that we can share, kind of drop a little bit of information in this interview here?
No, no, not right now, but I will say that it's going to be very surprising and unexpected. So.
All right.
I'll give you the mystery there. But anyway, yeah, it was just so fun to be a part of it, and yeah, we'll see.
All right. And also, when it comes to being in a Ghostbusters film, I mean, I loved you like in Dr. Sleep. It was a great film. You did amazing in it there. What's it like? I mean, you did Dr. Sleep, obviously, an old school film that kind of brought back. Now we got Ghostbusters back again in the limelight. Joining a franchise like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really special. The Shining was one of my favorite movies ever, and so is Ghostbusters. I remember watching it as a kid and just it changing the way I looked at movies and movie making. I would say that the similarity here, Dan Aykroyd, no big deal. The similarity here is that they're standalone films. You know, I like the fact that it really does pay homage to the original, but at the same time, it's so new and exciting. And if you haven't seen the original, you'll still enjoy this film. And yeah, so that's how I feel. Yeah.
So for my part, I have to be honest. I have never seen Emily in anything. I've not watched Dr. Sleep. I've never seen Code Black. I was not familiar with her. So when she walked up to us, I wasn't even really sure what we should ask, other than about who she is, because she's the one character who we didn't know about. So when you kind of asked this question to her of based on the marketing, we kind of don't really know much about your character. Can you tell us anything? And she was like, nope, it's a surprise. It is a surprise for anyone who listens to the podcast, listening right now, who's going to go see the movie. It is a surprise. You will be surprised at who she plays in the movie. She's not she's not Egon Spengler resurrected, but
no.
But what did you feel about your conversation with Emily?
It was almost a crush moment for me in the respects that she was just so well presented, well spoken. I kind of feel the same way you did with Carrie Coon, where I wish I could have 10 more minutes just to discuss and talk, especially after seeing the movie in terms of her role and who she played and all this such. Because she was great. I mean, I have a little bit of a different thing with her just because I did watch Dr. Sleep. I thought she was amazing in that. I feel like she was honestly the best part of that movie. I love The Shining. I loved her in that. And it's cool to see her obviously, kind of continue on the legacy of The Shining and now continuing to live on with, the legacy of Ghostbusters. And she kind of also mentioned that, both of those were two of her favorite franchises, favorite films growing up, which is baffling to me because obviously she's so much younger than us. So
yes,
when she's like, growing up. Oh, you mean what, in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I thought that she was really cool, and I wanted to talk with her more, like you said, after we found out who her character was. Mm-hmm. And I heard after the premiere, I talked with folks that when she came by the fan pen, there was some discussion that not everybody was as engaging with the fan pen as they may have been with us, to be fair.
Yeah.
And apparently she was. Apparently she stopped and talked with a lot of fans, and apparently she said to them before they walked into the movie, please don't hate me for my character. Which I was like, how could you possibly hate her? She's incredibly nice. And I wouldn't even hate her because of her character, to be honest. Which we'll talk about that in a few minutes because we still need we do need to talk about the movie. So yeah, I thought that she was really fascinating, and I'm really glad we got to chat with her, and maybe someday we'll get to do more of that because it would be interesting to know more about what was going through her mind and playing that role and kind of the pressure and the stress of, being a character who kind of, we'll say, sets off a lot of the action in the story, if that makes sense. We also got to talk with Finn Wolfhard, which was cool. Which, as you mentioned earlier, we weren't necessarily sure who Finn Wolfhard was. But
apparently not. But yeah, we were able to catch a quick word with old Finn.
Yeah, let's take a listen to that real quick.
In Frozen Empire, from what we've seen in the trailers, you have an interaction with Slimer.
Yes.
Which, I mean, that kind of puts you in a elite club when really it's only you and Bill Murray that has been slimed.
It's pretty amazing. Kind of an honor to be amongst Bill Murray and to be slimed by the same Slimer. Pretty unbelievable. Yeah.
When it comes to the Trevor Spengler character, does he have his driver's license now?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
When it comes to the Trevor Spengler character now, does he have his driver's license?
Oh, yes, he does. Thank God. Yeah. Finally. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
But does Finn Wolfhard?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So my terrible one-liner brain here was, you asked him whether or not Trevor has a driver's license now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as he walked away, I said, do you have a driver's license now? Because during Afterlife, he notoriously did not have a driver's license. And it was one of the things that we were joking about was that, like, he drives the Ecto-1 in the movie, but in real life, even though he legally is of age, he didn't have a driver's license. So just so everybody knows, Finn Wolfhard confirmed he does, in fact, have a driver's license now. If you think that you're seeing him in traffic in LA, you very well may be.
Yeah. And I mean, I thought about going there, but all I could think of was what would be the case if he didn't have his driver's license, and maybe it's like a sore spot for him. I just imagined him like leaving our area, looking at one of these Sony execs and be like, never again. These guys, never again.
I'm sorry. I'm your bad influence. I'm terribly sorry. But he was a real trip. I like talking with him. He's very engaged in what he's doing, and it's really clear that like he has a love for this too, as much as like he does a ton of stuff. He has Stranger Things. He has the new SNL that's coming out that he's going to be working on now with Jason and Gil. But it's like this is still like for him not just any old project. I mean, it means something.
Yeah, and like speaking to him, it was obviously like the quickest among everybody, but I mean that's to be expected. Like he's like probably one of the hottest young actors in Hollywood, right? So like everybody wants to talk to Finn, and the fact that we did, even though for 30, 45 seconds, I'm still blown away by that.
Yeah, it was pretty quick, but like it was something where you really got a sense that he's, he gives a damn about what he's doing, and that's what matters to me is that like people care about the characters they're playing. And one of those people who we got to talk to who really seems to be very highly invested in their character was Logan Kim, So let's take a listen real quick to the conversation we had with Logan Kim.
You're doing good?
Yeah, dude, I just got my suit, and I'm feeling it, and I'm liking it, and I just got it tailored, and finally making me look good. So I don't know, dude. Honestly, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I hope you guys love it. I hope I love it, and I can't wait.
Now I gotta ask, because everything I've seen from the film, I've been hearing about the film.
Yeah.
It sounds like you and Dan Aykroyd, Ray Stantz, you have this kind of like budding relationship with him. You kind of rent out, I guess, the basement of Ray's Occult Bookstore.
Yeah. I'd say he's more like my mentor, podcast mentor, and podcast really looks up to him, and he loves learning things from him, and just kind of Ray took him under his wing, really. Yeah.
Are we going to find out Podcast's name in Frozen Empire? His real name?
No, not this time. Maybe not ever. I have no idea. I know it, but you guys can keep guessing. So have fun with that.
So just to be clear to everybody, like, no, we're not going to find out who Podcast is in the movie. Logan was not kidding when he said it in response to us, but he does know. And it drives me crazy that like he still knows what Podcast's real name is. And we don't get to find out, but he knows, and he keeps it close to the vest. Like it's something that he's still holding as a secret,
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe in the third one, but I'm happy to say. I mean, we're gonna dive into the conversation, but I'm happy to say that when it comes to Kim's portrayal as Podcast in Frozen Empire, I think he's got like some of the best like visual gags. I would say in the film. He's fantastic. And, again, fantastic on this red carpet, this premiere, really took the time, again, acknowledged by name beforehand, which blew me away. The fact that Logan Kim, checks out, the Ghostbusters fandom, the Ghostbusters fan sites and everything. It kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit there, I would say. But yeah, just an unreal moment.
Yeah. And you're right. Like in the film, he has so many good comedic beats, it's just, you can tell he's having fun with what he's doing. And it's still amazing to consider that he's so early on in his acting career. Like the Afterlife was his first feature, I think that this is probably his second. I mean, I know he did, a Walking Dead show, but I'm pretty sure this is like his second full feature film, so it's kind of like, he's still kind of almost green as an actor in some ways in Hollywood because he's only been doing this a few years, but you don't really get the sense when you talk to him. He's very well spoken and articulate,
yeah, like I feel like some of the gags in Frozen Empire, like some of the jokes with him, just the timing is perfect, just so perfect. The delivery is great. You would think he's a seasoned pro.
Yeah. And I want to say too that like, we didn't get a chance to talk to McKenna Grace on the red carpet, unfortunately. She kind of ended up getting pushed along and shuffled past us after talking to two other folks. And I mean, there was a lot going on at that point in terms of trying to get people in rooms for photos with the press. Right.
Exactly. And that's the thing too, is like when you're talking to someone and, you may speak to somebody for a minute or 2 minutes.
Yeah. Right.
Can mean whether or not you can snag that other person for the interview. So, if we sit there and we talk to Logan Kim for 2 minutes, which I loved, by the way,
yes,
that made it so that, let's say like something like James Acaster, we weren't there when he was available. So he kind of had to walk by. Right. So you do kind of open yourself up for that sometimes where it's like, okay, who do I want to interview? How fast can this go? But again, I'm super appreciative for anybody and everybody that stopped and talked to us.
I totally am too. And what I was going to say is that I think that Logan, like I've thought of McKenna as being incredibly engaging of fans because I see her at cons and stuff like, you see photos of her and videos of her interactions with her fans coming out. And she has a lot of fans, like between her music, between like the other things that she's acted in, etc. She has a lot of people coming out to her.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that like watching over the course of several days, Logan Kim engage individual fans was like, he was one of the most giving people you could see, like engaging people. Like he was sign everything put in front of him. He literally would get down on his knees to hug little kids who were, in flight suits with like toy proton packs and like got on their level to talk with them one-on-one, like, about what they like about the Ghostbusters, universe and what characters, like, it was just really cool to see him take on such a role, like as a young man, like who's like coming into his own and kind of figuring out his career. He was very giving to folks. And I was really appreciative of the time that he kind of spent with us. And I gave him an Extraplasm pin and sent him on his way because that was my thing. I'm like, people are probably sitting there premiering like, what is this thing somebody gave me as they're sitting in the movie? But he was really great. We also had a chance to talk to Celeste O'Connor.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a listen to that real quick.
In Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, the character of Lucky, she's back now. I'm quite curious. In Afterlife, you really only had a proton pack on for that split second where you kind of bust through the door there, kind of zap Gozer. However, in the trailer to this one, it seems like you're getting more in on the action. How was that for you?
Oh my god, it was so much fun. I loved being able to like play with the proton packs and even some new toys that we will get to see in this new film. So it was my favorite part, getting to be a part of the action.
How was it like getting an actual like Lucky action figure? I mean, there's been several so far. How's it like actually having like a Celeste O'Connor Lucky action figure in hand?
It's really cool. It's really surreal. Like my dad was a big Ghostbusters fan and he sent me like a bunch of my action figures and it was just like so cute. So now I have like 4 in my house and I'm like, I swear my dad got these for me. I didn't buy them all, but it's amazing.
I was really kind of fascinated to interact with Celeste because I wasn't really sure what to make of Lucky in this new movie. Do you know what I mean? Like, as a character, she's kind of like a person who already lived in Somerville. I mean, so is Podcast, but like her interest in the last movie is less Ghostbuster and more kind of like romantic interest to, Trevor, right?
Yeah.
But by the end of the movie, she kind of takes on a role as a Ghostbuster. So I was kind of like, what is she going to be in this new movie? What did you think?
Just speaking with us, I know we kind of like touched on, her fan or her family actually collecting, her action figures and such like that. Just really, really nice. And I got to say, like from a fashion standpoint on a whole nother level, like I don't know that much about modern day fashion, but what she was wearing, I got to say, it certainly caught my eye and they look fantastic in it.
Yeah, it was awesome. They looked great, and it was sort of almost like a serpentine dress. It was kind of almost seemed like it might come alive and eat us if we were too threatening. I'm kidding, but it was very unique and very interesting and cool. But I think also, like I liked that notion that there was that nerdiness to things. It's like being excited about the fact that you have an action figure of yourself and that your family have bought several of them. Your dad is really out there buying toys of you. which is kind of a weird thing to consider. But yeah, it was a fun conversation. And that kind of like leaves us with our OGs, I think, right? Did we cover everybody else that we talked to?
Yeah. That's pretty much now we're down to good old Danny Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, and Bill Murray.
So let's talk about this kind of I want to talk about Dan for a minute because he's ever the salesman. Like, he certainly talked to us and had a cool conversation with us, but he came in and when he first came in, he was like coordinating and moving people along.
Oh yeah, he's
like,
working the line. I mean, and like when it comes to the Emily Ellen Lynn interview, if you watch that up on the Ghostbusters News YouTube channel, you can see him like he's just walking by in the background and he's like commanding people around. And actually, he leads Emily to us.
Yes,
you know, like it's a thing where it's just like, talk to these people right here. In his classic Dan Aykroyd tone. Like, I mean,
he was doing the same thing with McKenna.
Yeah,
right?
I don't understand. Like, he was like working the line, and I loved it. It was great. And then like Dan, it was so funny too because like not only that, but when it came to talking with Dan, which you're about to hear in a few couple seconds, he did his stuff. You know, he answered one question, and then he pretty much just shoved Ernie Hudson in front of us. It was just a thing of like, oh, hey, Ernie, and he's just like, Ernie's like, well, I guess I'm going to talk to Ghostbusters News now. Okay, let's do this. Thanks, Dan. So
yeah, let's take a listen to that conversation with Dan real quick.
So I gotta ask, Dan, Ray Stantz, Heart of the Ghostbusters. From what we've seen so far in Frozen Empire, are you now maybe the broken heart of the Ghostbusters? Like, what's happening there?
Well, you know, they tried to parcel me out and shift me off to pasture, and I fought and resisted that, and we'll just see if I can survive. But I'm happy to pass the torch to the young. Happy to. How do you do, sir? Yeah. And thank God he saved us all. So.
I love it. I love the jacket, man. Yes, it's amazing.
He's always Dan Aykroyd. Like, I mean, obviously he is, that's his name, but like, he's always this person who's like always talking with the same tone and intensity about Ghostbusters. There are other clips I heard him talking about, in interviews where he was like, we're about to experience 2 hours of unadulterated joy for everyone.
Mm-hmm. And
it's just such a Dan Aykroyd thing to say,
Yeah. And I it's weird too, because like in this movie, especially, I feel like Dan Aykroyd and Ray Stantz merges together more so than ever. And I feel like on the red carpet beforehand, like I asked him, I first said Dan, and then I corrected and said, Ray Stantz is, the heart of the Ghostbusters,
Right.
And I feel like when I asked him that question, if Ray Stantz was now, the broken heart of the Ghostbusters, I feel like Dan left and Ray entered.
Right.
For that split second. Like, I feel like I was talking to Ray. And then when he saw Ernie, I don't know who he was. Was he interacting with Ernie as Ray or I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like they're almost like seamless at this point.
Yes, that's when I call him, Dan Stantz. Right?
Yeah,
like that's because you're like, are you talking to Dan Aykroyd? Or are you talking to him using the pronouns of I when referring to his character? Right. Like, and it's just kind of fascinating. I really love his intensity. And I will say this for sure. I'm glad that I have a better quick memory of interacting with Dan Aykroyd than being told that I should have bought shoes. But yeah, it was nice to be able to talk with him in a way where we had a few moments, and it was really quick, right? Like, it was still very quick, and he was moving very quickly between people and kind of like, again, he like literally was facilitating McKenna interacting, like, talk to these people.
He was working the line. Like
right.
Like, him being part of interviews, that was not his job at that moment. Like,
no,
his job was to get people from point A to point. He was getting people to interviews. That was his thing. And I have no idea why he was doing that, but you know what? Hey, Dan, thank you. Because without you, we may have not been able to interview Emily Ellen or some of the other people. So
agreed.
Thank you so much.
And
Ernie.
he is like the primary marketer, right? Like, he always is. He's the dude spinning the plates to try and keep Ghostbusters alive for decades and decades. So he's the guy who's going to make sure that people go talk to the people they should talk to, which I appreciate. And we did get to talk to Ernie, which was amazing. Before we get into that, I want to say, if you're watching this clip on Ghostbusters News and you go take a look at it, you'll notice that he's wearing a Zeddemore pin. That was given to him by AJ Quick right before he talked to us. And I actually was able to capture some of that moment and send it to AJ because Ernie was totally like thrilled about this. I thought it was so cool. He got a Zedmore Industries pin that he could add to his suit on the spot, and he immediately turned around to his partner and was like, I need help with this. Like, it was like having it pinned on him right in front of us because he thought it was so cool that he had a Zedmore Industries pin. And he was like, you made this? That's amazing. But let's take a listen to our conversation with Ernie Hudson real quick.
Hey guys. Ernie, how you doing? Good. When it comes to your role of Winston Zeddemore, you went from inexperienced hire to now pretty much running the whole operation.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
I'm sorry?
What does it mean to you?
Well, it means everything to me. I mean, I think Winston is a guy who genuinely cares, and what I love about the way the character has developed is he kind of looks out for that. He's appreciative. He still kind of helps Ray with the rent, and but he's fascinated about the idea of ghosts and looking deeper than just going around and capturing them, but let's look into why this is happening and the science of it. So I'm hoping as we develop more, we'll see more of, what's really behind the ghosts. And, before we trap somebody, maybe we should check if it's our grandparents or not, but I'm excited. I love the way they've let the character expand and grow.
What's your takeaway from interacting with Ernie Hudson?
Again, just a cool dude. He's so suave, like in his delivery, and he really understands like the Winston character. I kind of just get that vibe, that feel for it. He just really, not only does Winston care about the Ghostbusters, but I really feel like over the last several years, over the last decade or so, it's really become much more important to Ernie. Especially following Afterlife and where his character is going and such like that. So I really hope if Frozen Empire is a success and it continues going, and he's still not really at the forefront because he's not really in Frozen Empire, but he's still that figurehead of the franchise.
Yeah, I think that he has moved like so far from where he started with the franchise. I mean, when you consider that he was a guy who came into the movie and had a lot of his lines cut, like a lot of the jokes that were assigned his character got retooled. As a character in the movie, like his character is somebody who's hired with no experience for very little pay. And now he's the guy who's like sort of stewarding this thing in a way. And it was like so cool to watch him and Dan Aykroyd like shake hands and kind of hug in front of us. I mean, we got to see that happen with Paul Rudd too, when they all met up with Paul Rudd. And unfortunately we didn't get to talk with Paul Rudd. But like watching the two of them interact was kind of cool to me in my brain, because I was like, this is like watching the two people who are principally responsible the most, like at this point out of the actors, for helping represent the fandom. Like Dan is the person who carried that torch for decades, and Ernie is the guy who was going off to conventions even when it wasn't cool. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I mean, Ghostbusters is cool always, but like when they're during the dark times, when there was no media, like when there was nothing coming out and it was like, oh, we're excited because there's like some Mattel action figures, but maybe there'll be a video game. Like he was the guy going off to conventions. Everybody has a story about meeting Ernie Hudson, and he always takes the time to engage fans earnestly, genuinely, and he paints his signature on everything like beautifully every time he signs it, and it's just like to see him standing there in a blue suit. It was like looking at Winston Zeddemore in a weird way, like he's like there as an executive,
yeah,
and I really enjoyed like that moment of like being able to engage him. He seemed to really enjoy being there. And I love that because like he's had his own story, with Ghostbusters. And in that moment, he seemed to just really be taking in the joy of not just being at a premiere, but, having a fan, publication hand him something that is a gift and have him be like impressed by it was really cool. So it also made my pin look like junk, but damn you, AJ, but I'm kidding. But this was such a cool experience that, we got to talk with all these people. So then the final thing that happened, was we were all standing around kind of waiting, and that's when Bill ran in. If you've seen it over on the Extraplasm or Ghostbusters News Instagram accounts, because it's co-shared on both, then you might have seen this quick little like 12-second video of Bill running in past all of us and showering everybody with water. And if you go look at the official photos that were taken, or posted by the Ghostbusters social media for the premiere, you'll see that he continued throwing water at Jason Reitman. So we didn't get to talk to him, but we definitely got wet. So that's cool, I guess.
Yeah, no, the hurricane was in full effect, and again, I mean, not everybody can have a Bill Murray story. We got one, so I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, I'm not either. That's the closest I will probably ever get to Bill Murray. And I mean that, like, if there's another premiere, I would love to be able to talk to him, but like, I have no expectation that I'll ever be any closer to Bill Murray than I was in that moment. I never thought I'd see him at Fan Fest, you know? So like, and he wasn't there. So like to sort of be that close to him was really cool. The one person who I was really disappointed we didn't get to talk to, other than like, you know, obviously I wanted to talk to McKenna, that would have been cool. And I would have liked to talk to Paul Rudd, that would have been cool. But as somebody who was absent entirely, who wasn't there at all, Kumail. Yeah. Kumail Nanjiani was not at the premiere for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, but I have a feeling that he might be working on something. If you look at his social media, you might notice that he's not posted anything in over a week, despite the fact that he has a pretty significant role we're going to talk about in a minute in this film, you know? So I was kind of surprised that we didn't see him at all. We also didn't get to talk to Patton Oswalt, which would have been cool. I probably would have asked him how many people showed up at the comic book shop after me trying to get into Finger Point, but that would have been my stupid one-line joke. But you know, all in all, I think we had a really good experience of talking to these different folks, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, again here, this is a huge thank you goes out to Eric Reich at Ghost Corps, Sony Pictures. Yeah. This was as perfect of an evening I think I could have imagined when it comes to covering a Ghostbusters premiere. Yeah, as an experience, I mean, this is probably like top tier level. I've been doing this for 15 years now when it comes to the website. And this is probably, you know, a peak moment for me, no doubt. Yeah, just blew away all expectations.
I have been doing Extraplasm for nowhere near as long as you've been running your website, but like without question, this was one of those things that was just mind-blowingly amazing. And like, I you know, you said it earlier, I don't want it to be once in a lifetime because I'd love to do it again.
Yeah.
But I totally acknowledge that's what it is, you know.
And let me totally make it clear here when it comes to me being like, hey, you know, we've been doing this for 15 years, the only reason that myself, and I don't really want to speak for them, but I feel like they share the same sentiment. You know, yes, have some podcast, AJ Quick, Ghostbusters fans, you know, everybody that was there. The reason that we are there, I mean, yeah, you can say, okay, it's because of, you know, what we do. Okay, fine. Yeah. But really the reason that we are there is because of you, you know, the guys that listen to the podcast, that watch the YouTube videos, that read the articles, that reshare on social media, that follow us on social media. We're there because of you. I don't care. I mean, I can say this and I can say that. The reason that Sony wants us there or Ghost Corps wants us there is because of our social media reach. They know that we've got a dedicated Ghostbusters fan base behind us, and we're there because of you guys. And I cannot thank the people that came up to me enough at the Firehouse, and I cannot thank the people, again, everyone who's listening to this, checks out the website, all that, because you are the reason that we were given this opportunity. You are the reason that, you know, I was able to get doused with water by Bill Murray and finally fulfill that 15-year-old prophecy of interviewing Dan Aykroyd. My goal. Again, just a huge thank you.
Yeah, I have to say the same thing, you know, that like this was an amazing experience to be a part of, but it's something that I don't think I could have ever been doing if it weren't for the fact that people are so supportive of Extraplasm. I mean, obviously you invited me to come on the red carpet with you and to help you out. But I mean, even just being at the screening is something that to have been chosen to be at it would have been amazing. And if it weren't for the fact that, you know, we've developed a relationship over the course of as many episodes of Extraplasm as we've done, and that people have been supportive of those episodes and things like, you know, we've developed a really good collaborative working relationship, I think. And I want to say that too, like as much as I'm appreciative of everybody else, you know, before we talk about the movie itself, one of the biggest takeaways for me, and I'll get emo for a second, and is that I had a really good time with you. I had a really good experience of working with you, of hanging out with you, of, you know, going and eating lunch with you and just chilling and being in New York and eating cookies and riding subway trains. And like, I really value our friendship and our collaboration on things. And I'm so lucky and so grateful that not only that I got to have this experience, but that I got to have it with you because you're an awesome partner to work with. So thank you for that, because it was a lot of fun to work with you for this. So
no, I thank you for that. I thank you for the kind words, and also, I mean, I thank you for being there as the right hand man and capturing the footage, getting everything together, and I look forward to seeing what comes next when it comes to whatever Sony, whatever we got Ghostbusters Day obviously coming up later this year, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, we can parachute in and cover it like we're war correspondents. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, there we go.
But this is the part where we're going to warn everybody. I think we've covered the premiere trip, so like to the extent that like the lead up to the movie. Certainly, I had another day afterwards of kind of putzing around with Tony Taylor and seeing Gil, outside the Lego store, who said, go ahead and put out your episode. But that was a little more of just kind of like hanging out with friends and not so much like the premiere because it was over. So I think this is about the point where we should probably talk about the movie. Would you agree?
Yeah. I'm sure some people saw the link to this episode and they just skipped right to here.
So I'm going to put that in like where to jump to, but if you're trying not to hear the spoilers, if you just wanted to listen to the episode to this point, like this is the part of the episode where you're going to want to hit pause and come back after you see the movie and then check it out. So your spoiler warning has been made. We are going to talk about this movie in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so I really enjoyed Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, wait a minute. The guy who's always paused about Ghostbusters is paused about this movie? Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. I mean, our viewing experience was a little weird in the respects that we saw it on a massive screen at AMC. And we were also in the front row.
Yes.
So, I mean, it was recliners, so we could actually, we could kind of recline back. But
yeah,
man,
but
like,
I'll take that. We were one of like 13 or 15 people in that room who weren't cast and crew.
Exactly.
We did in fact get to sit in Auditorium 1 with everyone who made the movie, which was totally
amazing.
Cool.
and that should be touched on too, is the fact that I keep saying that those 2 days for myself when I was there, it just continued to up itself over and over again. So not only are you going to be doing press and like in front of the press, but you're also going to be in the same auditorium as Gil, as Jason, as the crew, as the cast.
Right.
Which, by the way, just a heads up there, if you are listening, great AMC workers of New York City, and if you were the one that cleaned up my mess, my mini puffed mess, I apologize. I bought one of those mini puffed sipper cups, and the head doesn't go on proper really at all. And I made a mess. Holy, it was at the concession area, like not in the theater. So I didn't make like an idiot of myself in front of Jason or Gil. But I totally doused the entire counter and ran.
I'm going to tell you this. I've said this on the podcast before, that when I saw Afterlife at the Friends and Family screening, I was so nervous that I dropped an entire 44-ounce soda in the middle of the theater and it ran under everyone's feet. And I was so afraid I was going to do it again this time. Mm-hmm. And then you spilled your spill outside and I was like, it's over. The spill's done. There won't be another one.
and the funny thing was too, is like, because we bought, we're still not talking about the movie yet, but I got the mini puff sipper cup. So I got that, right? And I got like a camera bag with like equipment in it and stuff like that. And then they're like, hey, here's some popcorn, and like,
right.
And not only that, but you're in the front of this massive theater. Like I'm like walking around all these people. My arms are like full. So the fact that I did not spill anything in the theater, I think that's a win. That's a pretty big win on my side.
No, I agree. And then what was weird is that you and I didn't know, like we didn't have seats next to each other. But it turned out we did, because there was just a gap in the seats. There was just this giant aisle between you and me. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's weird.
Yeah.
So I had the pleasure of sitting next to John Urqueba, by coincidence, who was seated he was assigned a seat next to me. So that was cool. I got to sit with him and sort of listen to John react to the movie. There was a lot of no way that was happening next to me throughout it. But I mean, the one thing maybe we should drop in here, we let people listen to, we did capture most of the curtain speech that Jason Reitman and Gil Kennan provided before the movie began. So Let's take a listen to that real quick.
And we're in AMC. I'm very happy to be here. We're in an actual movie theater. I want to thank Sony, Columbia Pictures, Tony Vincent-Clare, Tom Rothman, Sanford Pants, Josh Greenstein. People who believe in going to movies. There is no studio that believes more in this very thing we're doing right now, watching movies as a group in a movie theater. And I'm so grateful that they are behind Ghostbusters and this movie. Yes. I'm thinking about, frankly, one person tonight, and it's the same person I've been thinking about since we started this movie, and that is my father. He would want to be here more than any human being on Earth tonight. He loves Ghostbusters. A couple years ago, Gil and I drove up to my parents' house and we told my father this story in his backyard. And he loved it. And he loved it because it was a new Ghostbusters story with a new villain and a new adventure and new characters, and it really was a whole new way forward for Ghostbusters, and it brought them back to New York City, and that made him happiest the most. 5 years ago, my father handed me the proton pack, and it's a really scary thing picking that thing up and directing one of these movies, and it was the great honor of my life. And the second great honor is handing that proton pack to my best friend, my co-writer, and the genius director of the movie you are about to watch, Gil Cannon.
Hi, everyone. There's a good energy in this room. It's kind of wild. It's so great to be here, and I just have to say that the experience of writing now this second Ghostbusters movie with Jason, my best friend, has been like an unbelievable dream. I highly recommend working with people you care about a lot, because you create work that feels like it's a continuation of the friendship, the trust, the joy in movies. Our friendship began a long time ago, almost 20 years ago. It was really forged on long drives we used to take talking about film and stories. And those drives developed into our first collaborations as co-writers and really led us straight to this movie theater tonight here in New York City. And I'm just could not be more excited to be sharing the stage with you, and also to have had a front row seat to the bond, the love and respect that Jason and Ivan shared on Afterlife. I was lucky enough to tour the world with that film and see night after night all over the world the incredible shared love for this franchise between Ivan, his pride in his son Jason, and the fans that showed up all over the world, bringing their proton packs, wearing their flight suits. There's something special in Ghostbusters, and I know that because in 1984, when the first movie came out, it was my very first movie in a movie theater in America, in Los Angeles. My dad took me to see it in Hollywood, and the movie blew my mind and changed who I was as a kid, gave me dreams of making films one day, led me here to this theater with all of you tonight. And it's an incredible honor to be sharing this story with all of you. The thing about Ghostbusters is that it's always been about a community of oddballs, of weirdos, who come together to face up against the impossible. And that's exactly the experience of making these films, too. It's a labor of love. We all put our hearts and souls into it, and are really thrilled to be sharing this story with you all tonight. I hope you love the movie. Enjoy the show. There was one thing I was going to ask. Who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters! This really set the tone, I think they were really eager to get us set up for it. And there was a lot of love here that the two of them displayed for one another in terms of trust and creating a movie, you know, and I think that Jason was really excited to kind of, you know, reiterate some of what he said to us directly about, you know, how it's not Ghostbusters is not his. You know, he was eager to hand it off to somebody who could do a good job with it. And, you know, I think that they really led us into a movie that was really amazing. Your thoughts? Anything you had to say about the curtain speech they gave us?
I mean, as you just said, I mean, it set the stage, right? Like, this is something we were all waiting for. And I think for this, at this moment, this is when the realization kind of started setting in where this is not a dream, this is reality. And we're about to watch a brand new Ghostbusters film.
Yeah. And a Ghostbusters film that opened very differently from many other Ghostbusters films.
Well,
right?
I mean, even the whole film, I mean, you know, we're going to touch on this, but even the whole movie itself, it bucks the trend of what Ghostbusters movies typically are in terms of, you know, their tempo and just the beats that they usually have, you know, like go out, do the bust here, do this, do that, you know, big ending, whatever. And it's not to say that this does not have a big ending, because it certainly does. And it's not to say that there's not a ghost bust, because obviously there is. We've seen the Hell's Kitchen sewer dragon scene on YouTube and online. But just how they get from point A to point B and so on and so forth, it's different in this one.
Yeah. I mean, this is a movie that opens with a Robert Frost poem on the screen, right? Yeah. Which to me, I was like, oh, that's really weird. And then it cuts from a Robert Frost poem to a high-speed chase, right? And you're like, this is very different from how a Ghostbusters movie typically opens, of like some expository paranormal thing happening kind of subtly. You know, like think about like the first movie opens with our librarian, right? Like running terrified after some creepy stuff. The second movie opens up with, you know, Dana pushing a carriage down the street, you know, then runs away. But it's like a lot of the action is not really of the Ghostbusters. It's of the paranormal elsewhere in the city. And in this case, this is a movie that opens mid-bust. You know, just like we're thrown right into it. You are now in a Ghostbusters movie and you are in New York City, and the Spengler family are busting ghosts. Like this is what they do. And they've been doing it for a while. And I really liked the dynamic between them, like in the car. I love the sort of like family dynamic. There's a bunch of really good one-liners in that first like 5 minutes of the movie, you know?
And I should also say too, like we kind of glossed over it, but the intro to the film, like after the poem and everything, you know, it kind of gives you like this period piece of the death chill, like, you know, when it last happened. And it's something where we don't get the Ghostbusters song again in the intro. So it's something that, you know, it's coming, you're waiting for it. And eventually, you know, much like at Afterlife, it does come in the end. But again, here, much like Afterlife, it doesn't have your stereotypical Ghostbusters opening, which I guess at this point, in 2 films in, it's no longer stereotypical.
Right. It's no longer sort of the template. And I think like that's the most important thing to come away from this movie with, like, in terms of understanding what Ghostbusters movies can be, is that, does this movie follow the template of 1 and 2? No, it doesn't. And that's totally okay. Like, it doesn't need to. Yeah. In fact, it shouldn't, because those movies are 35 and 40 years old or whatever. And so, you know, like they kind of represent a different kind of filmmaking than what we do.
I think
today,
with Afterlife,
you know?
It was something where, you know, they kind of said, oh, we're using the original recipe. I heard that that verbiage used around a little bit. But I feel like when it comes to, after seeing Frozen Empire, it's like using the seasoning, you know, like you're using, it's that same seasoning, but the meat, the main ingredients, they're different. You know, they're changed up. It's a different era now. And I'm okay with that. I'm cool with that.
I think that, you know, just to kind of give people the lay of land about what happens with the Ghostbusters here, I think there was a really interesting dynamic to sort of create conflict within the family by sort of benching Phoebe. For those of you who have been wondering who is Walter Peck all this time, yes, in fact, he is the mayor of New York City. And no, I was not correct about the idea that he was perhaps working with the Ghostbusters, which was really my dream, which was that, you know, political pressure would require him to work with them. But instead, he is very vehemently opposed to the Ghostbusters and doesn't want them operating in the city, and takes issue with the fact that Phoebe is a minor who is hanging out the side of a car, as seen in the trailer. And as a result, basically says that she needs to be benched And so that kind of creates this awkwardness of like your primary character who kind of upholds the lineage of Egon Spengler the most is suddenly taken out of action of busting ghosts.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting choice. You know, like how do you create family conflict and family drama? It could have just been like, well, we have a new dad and that's kind of weird. But instead it was like, no, it's like literally we're going to take the character who you identify with potentially the most probably from the last movie and say they can't bust ghosts now and see what happens as a result of that, you know? And, you know, as we'll talk about, that plays out. There's some drama that happens as a result of her not being able to bust ghosts the way she's supposed to. So what did you think about this, sort of the way that this sets up the rest of the movie?
Well, I mean, it's good because like that's if you're going to do anything with Phoebe, because like her big attachments in that first film, I mean, obviously there's the family dynamic and there's like her relationship with like a friendship relationship with podcast, and ghost busting. And obviously ghost busting is the most important thing for her. You know, I'm a scientist, she says in Afterlife. Right. So to take that element away from her, that is just, I mean, that's 101 great conflict, character development. It's everything rolled into one. So that makes total sense. And speaking of that, when, you know, they do bench her later in the film, shortly thereafter, actually, she's the only one at the headquarters when the Ghostbusters get a call. And that's when she knows, crap, they're not taking me. Like, my family, they're leaving me here. This is actually happening. You know, holy crap, what do I do? And wouldn't you know it, they get a phone call. There's a ghost at a restaurant called Melodies. And then we get another great moment. I know I kind of referenced it earlier, but Podcast is great for the scenes he's in, where Podcast is just amped for Podcast and Phoebe back again, the ghost busting, you know, duo. And they go and do their thing. But this also sets a really great leeway into the introduction of Emily Ellen Lynn's character.
Right. Yeah.
So because really when it comes to Phoebe, she's kind of broken in this, like for a good portion of the movie. She's looking for purpose. She's looking for a reason.
Right.
And she's got this, you know, she likes ghosts, obviously. She's a Ghostbuster. She has that connection with Egon Spengler. So what better way to get to her or to make a connection with her than another ghost, which is Emily Ellen Lynn Melody.
Yes. Which the way that they introduce her character is that after Phoebe has been kind of benched from busting ghosts and is on the outs with her family, she sneaks off to the park with her chessboard and sets it up. And you almost get the impression that like she's there because she's hoping she's going to somehow summon Egon, right? Mm-hmm. That like she puts the chess pieces out, she begins moving them, and they begin moving on their own, like as she expects they would from a ghost, but then the ghost that appears in front of her is not her grandfather, right? Yeah. And it made me wonder if she's tried this before. Like if she watched him, if she was like, I wonder if I can bring him back. I know I watched him disappear and sparkle away, but all I need is a chessboard, right?
Yeah.
So like
I get that vibe.
It was kind of interesting that she's like off doing this. And I guess, you know, they don't really explain like what her motivation is, if that's what she's trying to do, but that's the presumption, is she's trying to connect with Egon. And instead this other ghost appears, which is, you know, a young woman who apparently died in a fire and lost all of her family. Her name is Melody, and she has one match that repeatedly she can light, and it reappears over and over again, and she can't cross over and move on and doesn't know why. And as a result, can't see her family. And she's shocked that Phoebe is like not scared of her, you know, like, but like they begin forming this relationship, this friendship that's kind of awkward. You know, like you're not really sure what to make of it. And it kind of drives the rest of the movie because ultimately it's this character who will be the catalyst that, you know, leads to everything that follows in terms of the big bad being able to leverage things, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
And that's the thing. I mean, at the same time, like, well, this is going on. You've got, you know, the Phoebe, her going on hard times. A little earlier beforehand, we've got the introduction of the Golden Orb, which is brought into Ray Stance's Ray's Occult bookstore. And it's probably my, again, I'm definitely gonna watch this week when it comes into theaters. But probably one of the moments I'm looking forward to is rewatching again is the introduction of Ray in this film, because I feel like this is Dan Aykroyd. Like this is Sci Factor Dan Aykroyd. This is Dan Aykroyd up to 10, which is Ray Stantz.
Yes.
It's so great.
Like he's essentially at Ray's Occult and he's got podcasts there as an intern, and his internship has him living down in the basement, and essentially the two of them are producing a social media show called Repossessed.
Yeah.
Where people come in and bring their items they think are haunted, and Ray uses the PKE meter to determine whether or not they contain any psychokinetic energy. And if they don't, apparently Podcast uses a giant sledgehammer to destroy them, which I was like, my favorite part of this scene was the idea that Podcast is basically like the Gallagher of Ghostbusters at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's his whole role now. But it is a hilarious scene. Like the Podcast sledgehammer, it's not the fact that it happens. It's the fact that it just happens out of nowhere. Like it's just
so sudden.
Yeah.
It's like,
and again,
and it calls back throughout the movie. There's other points during the movie where he just grabs a sledgehammer and hits something with it. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
So-
it's kind of his gimmick out of nowhere. Which I'm totally there for. Like if you don't want to get Podcast a proton pack, okay. But, at least you gave him something. And,
a giant mallet.
Yeah. And for what he's doing in this film, it's great. I wish there was a little more of him. But
yeah,
again, whoever he is in that scene with, I just feel like they're that much better. Like him and Dan together is great. Him and McKenna Grace is fantastic. He is just so jovial. I loved him in this. I think I've already said that several times. But I mean, he's in rare form. And again,
he's a trip.
The fact this is like, from what we gather, like his second big box office film is mind blowing to me. And I just want more Podcast. Heck, you know what? If we're going to get an animated series one day, let it just be Podcast. Let him just go out and go on his own journeys.
Yeah, no, I would love to see Logan Kim just have like his own spin-off show. It would be great. Right.
Oh,
like it's just, I loved that he and Dan have this relationship, or rather he and Ray have this relationship in the movie where he's like an intern, but he's really teaching Ray how to do things.
Yeah.
At one point, Ray says like, my intern and producer is telling me that you should like and subscribe.
Well, that's the thing. They're cutting like a little Instagram, at least from the description they gave online. It was an Instagram video.
Right.
And the other thing too, is when it comes to Podcast and Ray, they kind of tie up loose ends kind of quickly in the respects of like, people are like, oh, why would Podcast be in New York? It doesn't make any sense. Well, he told his family he is going to space camp. Whenever he gets a call from them, he has to play like a tape in the background of what it sounds like to be at space camp.
Right.
And then people are like, well, why are the mini puffs in the movie? Well, Ray apparently brought them back. He smuggled them back, as Podcast says, from Somerville. So like, almost immediately in like one scene, they're just like, all right, we're just going to put these two little things in a box, put a bow on it. There's your answers.
Right. Yep. It's like nicely done where you can go, okay, cool. We can move on from these key questions you might have about this,
Yeah.
And they don't dwell on it. Like they don't dwell on like, why are these people here from Somerville? Cause they are like, they came together, they made connections and they've chosen to be here, is kind of like the way that you understand it. So,
and the same goes for Celeste O'Connor, Lucky's character in the respects of she's just like, she's there, she's kind of doing like the intern job or what have you there at the, which we haven't talked about yet. The research facility, the Ghostbusters research facility. And that's kind of shown pretty early on. And I mean, that's a key element there. But going back to Ray's Occult, we're introduced to the Golden Orb. That's one of the items that is an actual possessed piece.
Right. Yep. And this is a piece that's brought in by Kumail, by his character. He plays Nadim, and essentially comes in and tries to sell his grandmother's artifacts that he, has found in a hidden room in the house, and figures that he can try and get $40 to $50 for the lot, and then realizes that they're in fact haunted items. Ray goes crazy. It actually breaks the PKE meter and causes it to start smoking because of how strong the psychokinetic energy is. And
nice
it turns out
to the real Ghostbusters, I gotta say.
Yes. Yeah. It was a good callback to that. At the same time, we've also find out that like, as that thing is sort of found at Ray's Occult and interacts with the PKE meter, this ice trail goes running towards the firehouse. And it's the first time that the containment unit sort of takes a hit from this sudden, giant psychokinetic spike that occurs alongside with some frozen stuff that kind of runs in a trail towards the firehouse. And what I thought was interesting about this is that they were talking about the idea that the containment unit was already almost full. right?
Yeah.
That like the reason, like we find out in the next few scenes that like there's been a facility that Winston has had being worked on at the Triborough Aquarium to build a new containment unit, along with a whole bunch of different ghost-busting lab stuff and research. But that essentially they know the containment unit is in fact not adequate at this point, one. And two, that apparently the original 1984 cross rip opened a dimensional portal between the other side and our world, and the containment unit functionally serves as like a cork in the bottle. So the whole reason that they bought the firehouse and continued to have it is because they know that if it were to fall in the wrong hands or were no longer to be guarded, it would allow the other side to come through, which to me is like a really big piece of canon information to need to know about the ghost-busting universe moving forward, you know?
Yeah, and it's a cool way to bring Ernie Hudson and Winston Zeddemore, because like already he's like commanding, like he's in there and they're showing like old plans that Egon like hand drew of the containment unit and everything. And then there's that question of like, why can't we just build a new one?
Right.
And then everybody kind of looks around like, oh, you haven't told him yet? And then that
Right.
takes us to this new research facility where you've got the massive containment unit. You've got all these ghosts where they're researching. You know, we had the introduction of Pukey, who is really just there in this film to puke. Like that's the only thing he's there for. He lives up to his name. You had the Possessor, all these other ghosts. But really Pukey and the Possessor. Those are your two big ones that you're kind of introduced into the scene.
Yeah, that they introduced those two characters pretty well, and obviously we know the sewer dragon is also, I believe, contained there at the time, right? That's one of the other monsters that's inside the lab with them, inside the glass. So it's an aquarium that's been recommissioned as a ghost fighting or ghost busting lab, and one of the things that's in this lab that's really interesting is the idea that they can put an object inside of a containment field that has essentially a bunch of neutrino wands, I believe, that kind of like power it. And it allows them to draw a spirit out of a haunted object or an object that's experienced trauma. And so they show things like a haunted disc man that's like trying to eat people's hands. And I thought this was so funny. And they use like these neutrino wands all inside this capsule to separate the item from the ghost and contain it. So it's a pretty cool concept, like that they can, you know, proactively get haunted objects. And it turns out that that's what Repossessed has also been doing. Like as Ray has been buying up the objects, he's actually been donating them over to Winston so that Winston can give them to the lab and they can use them to test this new equipment. So that's a pretty big important plot point for later on. But, you know, I thought this was really cool. The idea that they're developing all this new tech and new ways to sort of hunt ghosts. At the same time, I really felt like this was very Jurassic Park.
Yeah. I also love the fact too that in this research facility, again, they show us things like, you know, Pukey and Possessor and Possessor. I mean, it's all about comedy at that point. Like in the trailers, you see it take over, you know, one of the lions outside the library, and that's pretty intimidating. But right here, it's taking over a TV set. It's taking over a vacuum cleaner. It's all comical stuff. And then randomly, we see this one ghost, which I believe is called Phosphor, which is this really big, menacing, like skull-like ghost. And we don't really ever see it do too much damage. Like later in the film, it kind of pops up again. But this thing, like design-wise, is insane. So we kind of get like a pretty good scope in terms of the cutesy stuff, the not so cute, and then just like the straight up horrific in Phosphor.
Right. I like the idea that the Possessor ghost is extremely dangerous because it can move between all the objects, and it's something that plays out really well throughout the movie later on.
Yeah.
I have to say, like, I know I said this earlier, like such a nod here for me, like Ghost to Spirits Unleashed, because of the way that the Possessor moves between objects is no different than the way you move between objects in the game.
Yeah.
It's like hopping from one object to the next, to the next, to the next, as long as you can come within range of them. And I love the scene where the Possessor is knocking on the glass because it's possessed a folding chair. And, and Lars Pinfield, James Castor's character, says, if you behave, you'll get a tennis ball later.
Yeah.
Like, and the kid's a dog, you know? Like,
and Lars, I mean, James in this movie, I wish there was more of him. I kind of feel like that's one thing. And I don't mean to like knock the movie. I don't want to sound like that's a knock. I feel like Bill and Jason here, they've created characters that I want more of.
Yes.
And I feel like, again, with Logan Kim podcast and James Acaster and such like that, the cast here is quite bloated. There's a lot. There's a lot of characters, both old and new. And some of those you just want more of. And James is definitely one of those. For when we do see him, he has a pretty good amount of like little one-liners and such. Actually, I think the first time you hear him, he kind of chirps Paul Rudd a little bit, where he's trying to like listen for ghosts inside the containment unit, which was pretty good. But I just wish there was more of him in this film.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's my vibe about a lot of the characters in the movie. I would have liked to have seen more of them. And this was a concern I had going into the movie of like a lot of people in a movie that's kind of, less than 2 hours long means you may not get a ton of character development. But I will say this. I don't feel like I got robbed of anything.
No,
if that makes sense. I feel like it's different. You're not going to get long form character development in a movie that's short, but you get enough to give you like a sense of where everybody has been.
Yeah.
And that there's no like loose ends of like, well, how did they get here? So yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it tells a very cohesive story and the way that everything has kind of been brought together. And that's again a testament in terms of like all these characters and such being introduced. It's very cohesive, which I guess at this point, we've talked about the golden orb and such. That introduces us to Garaka.
Yes.
Where he's brought into this film and we kind of get, little glimpses of him. We hear his voice. And that's when we find out that maybe there's a couple extra layers involved when it comes to Emily Ellen Lynn's character.
Yes, because we kind of get this sense that perhaps Garaka is able to control ghosts and is influencing Emily Ellen Lynn to make a relationship with Phoebe for not so great reasons. Sort of to manipulate Phoebe into a position to take over and do some pretty bad stuff. And so, that is essentially something that ends up happening is that Phoebe ends up kind of being convinced to use the ionic separator, if you will, to kind of pull her spirit out of her body for 2 minutes. And that allows Garaka to take control of her and unleashes Garaka through the possession that she's under.
Garaka.
Yeah. Garaka Unleashed. It's the new DLC coming for Spirits Unleashed.
Let me tell you something. When I have a long, hard day, I like to unleash my Garaka.
I unleashed the Garaka. Yeah.
Oh, God.
But yeah, it's a pretty significant thing that relationship, it is one that on the one hand, you're excited for Phoebe because you see her starting to make a friendship. On the other hand, you very quickly get kind of the sense that it might not be good for her. And so that's one of the things that happens. One thing we've glossed over and forgotten about is the Slimer appearance. It's, it happens earlier in the movie and you'll see it several times throughout the movie. I have to say, I was so excited to see him. And there's a running bit of him and Finn Wolfhard, of Finn trying to catch him and repeatedly getting slimed, that I feel like takes its notes from the missing Louis Tully stuff from Ghostbusters 2,
it does.
If that makes sense.
And let me also add here that Arian and everyone like in the special effects department, they nailed Slimer. Like
yes.
There is a scene where, you've seen it in the trailers, Finn loads up the top of the ghost trap with Cheetos, and there's a trail of Cheetos coming from like all of Slimer's like garbage and everything. There's a shot that we've not seen in those trailers where Slimer is like hovering in the air eating. And
yes.
This is the best Slimer has ever looked. Like, I'm getting a weird tingle just thinking about it. I love the Slimer booty. No Slimer booty even in this one shot. It looks amazing. It looks so good. And just, I love this little dynamic here because Finn in this movie, and it's another thing too, I kind of wish there was a little bit more for him to sink his teeth into, but there's elements there. There is like the driver's license thing that comes near the end. There is that family relationship dynamic. There is this weird, like in a PG-13 film, there's a lot of talk about a sex dungeon at one point, which kind of comes out of nowhere between him and Celeste. And then we've got this Slimer thing that's going on. So there is a lot of Finn in this movie.
Yes.
He's in it quite a bit there. And I love the dialogue between him and Callie Spangler at one point where he's just like, there's something in the attic. Well, you're an adult, right? Yeah. So he goes up there, with the proton pack eventually, or actually the ghost trap first, I guess. Or is it the proton pack? I forget.
No, he's got the ghost trap first. The first time, you're right.
So yeah, he loads that up there with the Cheetos, and it's just an amazing looking scene. And he gets slimed. And again, I know we kind of mentioned in the interview with him, but this is kind of historic in the respects of you don't really think because there's the animated series and the video games, and the 2016 reboot and all that. And even in the reboot, Slimer didn't really slime anybody, right? And then really Finn Wolfhard is the only person outside of Bill Murray to have been slimed in a big box office motion picture. So
yeah,
I mean, that's a pretty cool little feat there. But I love this element between Finn, Trevor Spengler and Slimer.
It's also the first time we get to see an active sliming, right? Like
Yeah,
saw Bill Murray like on the ground covered in goo kicking and saying he slimed me. And we saw the lead up to that of like him screaming while holding the walkie talkie and Slimer approaching him. But we never saw an active sliming. In this case, like we
get the best
watched
of both
Trevor get
worlds.
slimed.
And yeah, I mean, like this time it's such a great mixture of you got the practical effects with like, the computer generated CGI. And to me, it's rather seamless. Like, I mean, obviously you can kind of tell if you're really looking, but it plays out so well to see, Slimer kind of lunging at Finn and then having that like full moment where he is going through his body. And as they showed in that behind the scenes Adam Savage video, like there's actually like a whole like rig that Finn Wolfhard is wearing to actually simulate like accurate slime, like splashing off of him. So
yeah,
the whole thing is not CGI or anything like that. It's pretty crazy to see the extent that they went to actually achieve some of these shots.
Yeah, and I have to say that I love that this Slimer setup happens because it means that the payoff that happens towards the end of the movie, where he comes back, has a lot more weight than if he had just showed up for a random cameo at the end of the movie and been like, "Here's how we resolve a point," And so, I really liked these scenes. They really kind of tied me back as a person, to the '84 movie in a way that was different, and let me know that Slimer's still around in the firehouse, which is pretty cool. So
it feels like they're playing with that real Ghostbusters vibe, but they're not going the way with it. It's like, they're giving you just a little bit of a taste, but this is still very much 84 Slimer. We're not going to turn him into a puppy just yet or anything like that. He's not going to be your pet. He can't be contained. Nobody's doing research on him anywhere. He's just chilling up in the attic. That's all.
Yep.
And he's just eating just garbage junk food and ruining the ceiling. And that's it. Like that's what his afterlife is now.
Right. It's just, he just hangs around there now because that's the place he's decided to be, and it's kind of fun. I really like I almost wish there was more of him in the movie, to be honest with you. But like,
it's
it was
funny
fun
too, because they dropped little pellets of that, like earlier in the film after Paul Rudd shows that they've rented Cannibal Girls, the old Ivan Reitman film.
Right.
There's a moment there where like Finn kind of references, like, was it like food going missing or something like that? There's like a
they've gotten into the snacks again.
Yeah,
right.
They kind of notion that. So that's like your little wink, like, oh, something's going on. And then of course you see pretty much like it almost looks like and like a mildew type effect, like a very like watery kind of rooftop or ceiling.
Yep.
And that leads to the investigation, right? He's going up there, he's seeing the slime starting to come down, it's getting thicker. And that's a reintroduction to Slimer.
Yeah. So it was really great to see him back in the movie. It was like, I really enjoyed it. And, I mean, I don't know how much we want to get into like giving away the entire ending of this movie, obviously, but I mean, we're kind of talking about some of the plot points that are going on, but I really kind of loved, look, I'm just going to say this. Like one of my favorite scenes in this movie is Phoebe is out of busting. Ray is out of busting, right? Like he's not currently licensed to be a Ghostbuster or whatever. And so he's running Ray's occult. And so when she doesn't have anybody to turn to, she turns to Dr. Ray. I love this. Dr. Ray. She refers to him as Dr. Ray, which is so funny to me. It's like listening to a kid in high school talk to, like their teacher who goes by the first name, like Mr. Jim, and she ends up connecting with him in a way because they are both kind of removed from being able to do what they love, but also having a deep interest in the paranormal. And let's be real. I think everybody thought we were going to see a movie where two kids raced around on a big tricycle thing with a sidecar. But it turns out those kids are just riding on it because Dan Aykroyd, Ray Stantz, is driving a motorcycle.
I can feel like it's just really like Dan turning to Gil, like, it'd be cool if I had a Harley, and or like Gil's just like, you know what, Dan, okay, we'll put your damn Harley in this film. That's all we're gonna do.
Yeah.
We're gonna change the look of it a bit. We're gonna have we're gonna call it we're gonna make it like a little mini Ecto.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not done in the respects of like it doesn't feel like it's being shoehorned in or anything like that.
Right.
I just love the fact that Dan has this.
Yeah. Yep. Like, and I really love those scenes that they have over like at the library with Hubert Wartsky, like when they talk to Patton Oswalt. I thought those were so cool. Like we kind of jumped to talking about, this point where Phoebe is going to end up getting manipulated. That happens later in the movie. But like, to me, like that was one of the most fun scenes in the movie is this moment where they're back in the library. They're running from ghosts inside the library. The librarian ghost is back chasing after Ray. They run outside and they're about to be eaten by one of the lions. And it turns out that not only does the motorcycle, have a sidecar and stuff, but it also has a series of buttons that can be pushed that cause, neutrino wands to flip out of it. And it's just like, this is so fun and cool. And as much as it's new stuff and it's not the Ecto 1, it's like in universe something you believe would exist. And again, it's also very real Ghostbusters, right? It's there's a threat. They need to stop the threat. They have to find the right button to push in order to do it. And it's cool because there's stakes to the moments that are there, but the way things get resolved is kind of fun and playful at the same time, Yeah. So
yeah, no, totally agree there when it comes to it. And I mean, them going into the library, I mean, that does introduce us to, Wartsky, good old Patton Oswalt there and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like he did great in the movie. And it's kind of that he's really there just to kind of overlay the danger and what's, the imminent threat of Garaka.
Right.
Like that's really him delivering everything. I know there were some people kind of concerned with Patton being it. I like Patton Oswalt. But he's in here really just to tell you really that threat. He's to sell you the story, to sell the imposing fear of Garaka.
Yep. And also to prove that Ghostbusters the video game is canon because there's an old library underneath the actual library.
I'm not getting into that conversation right now. But well, in the library, we are reintroduced to we've already seen the trailer, the library lady. She's back and she's in it for just a brief moment. It's not too crazy or anything like that. It's not like they're gonna zap the library ghost or anything. But it's cool that she's just been chilling down there for another 40 years.
Yeah. It's really cool to see another character sort of come back and get called back from the first movie. And she's only there for a moment. It's not like she becomes pivotal to the plot.
Yeah.
But like, it's cool that we got to see this because ultimately where we're going, right? Like where this movie will end up going is the idea that Garaka can command all ghosts. And so Garaka wants to get all the ghosts out of the containment unit because it wants to command them as an army. So this notion in the trailer of like every ghost they've ever fought, or every ghost they've ever busted is not just like, oh, they might all get out, but like they might all get out and get weaponized by like one entity that can essentially mind control ghosts.
And that attaches itself to like the storyline where you've now got at the library, you've got the possessor and it is trying to pretty much do its best to resurrect Garaka. Like it is only there to get the information it needs, pull it back, and figure out how to bring upon the return of Garaka.
Right. Like every ghost's motivation is essentially one that is like through manipulation, like working towards the big bad, as opposed to like, oh, you got a Zool and a Vince Clortho. You got two entities that if they get together, it's bad. No, it's like literally every ghost in the city can be potentially, activated to carry out the plot, So it's kind of fascinating in that sense. And, not because I'm trying to sort of offer the balance here of like plot points and also like leaving something for folks to, go see like, where we will end up as a result of this is back at the firehouse, right? Like that the ultimate problem here is that Garaka wants the containment unit and wants to crack it open to unleash all the ghosts upon the world and essentially bring about a frozen empire of, fear of that will just destroy all of humanity. And as it turns out, I was right about something, and I'm just going to say this. I said months ago that Kumail Nanjiani might make an appearance in this movie that was consistent with his appearance in Obi-Wan. And then in Obi-Wan, he kind of enters the narrative as like a shady, fake Jedi who's trying to manipulate people into thinking that he's real and he's taking money from folks and saying he can help them with problems and then like taking their money and disappearing, and he's kind of shady. But by the end of it, he actually has to step up into the role of a hero, and even though he's not an actual Jedi or not trained as one, he has to sort of pretend to be one for good cause, right?
Mhm.
And in this movie, he kind of has a very similar arc in the sense that he starts out as a guy who's trying to deal some junk, but by the end of the movie, he is absolutely pivotal to the way the problem gets resolved, right? Like he is the fact that he has a well of PKE energy inside of him that can be used to fight this thing is without question like an essential part of the movie. It was also weird, really why it was kind of weird that he wasn't at the premiere. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
because-
he is not only is he like a key pivotal character in the movie, I feel like to me, and I could be wrong in this. I mean, again, I saw it on a massive screen where I had to turn my head to look at different things that was happening. And I'm going to rewatch it again when it premieres this week, 21st, 22nd, wherever you're watching it at. Or yeah. But to me, he stole it. He is like one of the biggest takeaways from this film.
Yeah.
As much as I want to hype up, Logan Kim and, Acaster and Dan Aykroyd's performance, and hell, you know what? Annie Potts, she's great in the scene she's in. Winston Zeddemore, Ernie Hudson, Bill freaking Murray. I mean, this is rare for Murray. We haven't even talked about this yet, and it kind of ties in to Nanjiani here. But once we figure out that he's going to have, there's something to him other than just selling Rey this orb. We realize there's something going on with him. There is a scene there where they strap him into the old colander helmet, and who's interviewing him? Bill Murray, Peter Venkman.
Yep.
And this is, I want to say, top 3 moments of the film for me. It is done so well. And this is like Bill Murray as Peter Venkman, circa 84, Xener cards, but just like amped up. This is him even being more of a dick, more of an ass.
Yes.
And it works well, and it is hilarious, both because of Nanjiani, but also because of Murray. And Murray is not phoning it in here at all. And I think Nanjiani, I mean, he was talking about how much Ghostbusters means to him. To me, it shows in his performance because it's, I got to imagine with the stock of talent that's in this film, from Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, Bill, the legendary actors in this, to come in and potentially not even upstage them, but really steal the movie. You've got to have a love for that, for what the source material, and it clearly shows here.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you. I think that one, like Bill's performance in that scene is hilarious. And to be clear, like, yes, he is a dick, but there's good reason why, he's essentially trying to provoke him. And it's kind of funny because like they think that what they're going to do is provoke a demon that's going to jump out of him, right? Like they're going to get another ghost like they've seen. And instead, what they find is that this causes a power within him to manifest. Right. Yeah. And it's such a cool scene where you kind of get to see like almost like Bill almost kind of expecting it to do something else. Like, and he's like looking for like, well, aren't you going to turn into a ghost? Aren't you, or something, by keeping on messing with him. And instead they get a very different outcome, where they realize that they have an asset to help them. I love the way that Kumail's character has like a fun arc in this, and the way that they incorporated like ghost folklore into this movie is something I really appreciate. Like, we have always relied upon Ghostbusters as being very scientific in a way, even though it's total pseudoscience, right? Like part of the reason a bunch of us love the first movie is because it has, psychokinetic energy and other big giant sciencey words. And it's a bunch of science nerds doing things that are not at all science. But in this case, we're kind of talking more about like folklore and charms and like different kinds of metal that can ward off ghosts. And I think that's really cool. And I like it because it opens up the opportunity more for Ghostbusters to be grounded in different myths. Like I think like the Vigo story is like, well, he was a magician, right? And you're like, okay, cool. Yeah. So he can apparently lock himself into a painting and bind himself to it. All right, fine. But this is more like thinking about, actual folklore that exists out there. It's not an actual piece of established folklore in a culture, but it's very clear that like what's going on here is drawing from different, aspects of folklore about the paranormal, about ghosts, about containing and trapping them, etc. And so, this is part of why the object that Karaka is stuck in is made of brass, because apparently brass wards off ghosts. And
Dan,
so,
there's Dan Aykroyd fingerprints all over this.
all over
Like
it.
when it comes
all
to
over
the
it.
storyline. Yeah, yeah.
All over it. You get the sense that there was like some let's dig into some paranormal stuff, some real world things, and bring in some grounding. And it's something he talked about, like that Dan said this when he was walking around talking about the movie when he shouldn't have been necessarily. In interviews, he talked about the idea that this was grounded in some history and in some folklore, that they had a piece of history and folklore to sort of work with. So I really like that. I think that it adds something different, and it lets us begin to talk about like different kinds of paranormal entities within the Ghostbusters universe that don't necessarily have to be, ghosts that pop up on the PKE meter, or that are something that we've established already and know well.
And with that said, I feel like this could be a fork in the road for some people. I feel like some people are going to love this, while other people, this could be the thing that, it's just not an evil entity, and then they bust it and that's it. Like the other films, like the fact that there are these additional elements that aid them in their ghost busting battle, later in the film.
Right.
I feel like that could be a bit of a turning point for some people, where they're just like, you know what? That's just a bit too much. Despite the fact that in the first movie, we had a 100-foot tall Stay Puft Marshmallow Man walking down the streets of New York City. Maybe this could just be a bridge too far for some.
Yeah.
To me, it wasn't. And I'm there with you in the respects that I love the depth that it's adding here, because especially in the respects of like where there have been all these other projects talked about, an animated series, animated film. This just, it just feels like we're going deeper and deeper into what other projects could do.
Yep. And there's so much potential left on the ground. Like by the time this movie's over, like I don't want to say like, this is how it ends. Right. Because I know somebody listening will be like, well, you shouldn't have gone that far. Right. But like, I think that it's cool that by the end of this movie, you get the sense that like ghost busting will continue and is only really growing. Right. That like, everything is growing from the firehouse. I thought at one point that the firehouse might just get destroyed in this movie. And I joked about how like they may not blow up the Ecto, but they might blow up the Batcave. Right. And
yeah,
I think there could have been a version of this movie where that happened, but it doesn't, by the end of this movie. And instead you get the sense that the firehouse will still be there, but so will everything else that's being grown around Ghostbusters, all this other new tech and these new facilities and things that Winston's putting money into. And so, I really think it leaves so much potential and so much room for another movie to happen after this.
Really touch on that, because I feel like to some degrees, like there was some criticism I saw online of people being like, oh, why does the tech, it just looks like it's, Mod Podge of the previous stuff. Well, they kind of get this tech out of necessity. Right? Like this isn't really the final build. There could be other things that they're doing with it.
Absolutely.
They need this gear because they have to fight Garaka. They have to take it on. So, there are things that kind of happen here. Again, we don't really want to, give away the ending or anything like that, despite this being kind of a spoiler-filled review, which we've done. The ending is still there to be enjoyed. And it is a hell of an ending. But I will say, in talking about it, probably my biggest criticism is the third act. I feel like it could have used a bit of breathing room. I feel like it could have added like another 10 minutes to it, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it goes from, it hits so hard. Everything, the stakes rise, and here it is. This is the ending. And then it's over.
My example of that criticism is that brass casting takes longer than that.
Yeah.
But I think that, I had a very similar reaction of feeling like the third act was kind of quick. And I talked with some folks after this, and they were like, after the premiere, like outside, and they were like, it just seems like it was really fast and it wrapped up really quickly. And I said, yeah, I get that. But I also I want to throw an analogy out there that maybe some people will understand. I am a big Doctor Who fan. And in the span of an hour-long Doctor Who episode, you can threaten the entire universe, right? Like you can be like, there's a force of evil out there that's going to destroy the entire universe. And within 45 minutes or 52 minutes, you can wrap it up. Right. And this is an hour and 45, right? So there's far more time in this to wrap things up than there would be in a Doctor Who episode. And a Doctor Who episode is a thing that I can totally roll with and appreciate because they're uncomplicated, if that makes sense. Like there's the fact that the thing is like efficient and moves quickly means that it doesn't feature a lot of complication and a lot to overthink about, if that makes some sense. Right. Like, And I liked that about this movie. Like, it didn't leave me sitting there going like, well, I wonder about this and that. Like, instead I was moving and felt like I was part of an ongoing adventure from beginning to end. And it didn't feel like there were points. If there's a criticism he made there, that's like, I think you're right. Like 10 minutes of breathing room would be good because the movie is constantly moving. Does that make some sense?
Yeah. I just feel like, it's weird because I almost forgot about Phoebe. Like she was going and she was doing the stuff, she was doing her own thing. And then randomly she just kind of appears. And I don't know. I just feel like I kind of forgot about her. And I feel like there could have been a great scene there where as things were kind of rising, there was that kind of family moment.
What's funny is that family moment happens in a weird way where like Paul Rudd is trying to talk to Phoebe, but it turns out she's not in the room. Like he's having a heartfelt, emotional family moment, but he's having it to a closed door that she's snuck out of. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's part of like, you're right. Like you don't get this sense to some extent, like that there's that family dynamic building going on until after she's been in jeopardy and they save her, like, yeah. And so,
that said though, there is a resolve that does kind of come at the end there, which I thought was unexpectedly emotional.
Yes.
I don't know about if I was the only one, but it's just, I don't know, just by using one word or a couple words that are out of nowhere or something that you didn't know that they were going to drop, but they do. You really kind of feel like that, or you kind of realize that, the ride you were just on with those characters and, they mean something and they are connecting with you and they are hitting with you.
Right.
Because if they weren't, you wouldn't get choked up over it. And
exactly.
To me, the ending of this film, there is that moment where, it hit me and and not only did that hit me, but, shortly thereafter, I'm going to go ahead and say it. They do it again. They bring in the Ghostbusters theme song at the very end. And it's there and it got me in Afterlife and damn it got me again in Frozen Empire.
Yeah. No, I mean, and the way the movie ends, I'm really like, by the end of it, I'm really satisfied. I walk out of the theater feeling really happy. And like, I've been trying to find the way to like phrase this. And I think I might've just finally found it. I think the first Ghostbusters is the funniest Ghostbusters, right? Just that's how I feel. But I think that this Ghostbusters might be the most fun Ghostbusters.
Well, that's something I've always talked about in the respects of like, I feel like Ghostbusters 2 is my favorite. Even though it's not the best made movie, the first one's the first, it's the best in terms of quality.
Right.
But Ghostbusters 2 to me was always fun. Like it was the most fun movie. If there was a movie you're going to like sit me down and watch, it's the second one. Like it's just a fun film. If I'm doing something that day and I need something playing in the background, probably Ghostbusters 2. And to me, even though again, they kind of keep that seasoning the same from 84 in this one, there are references. There's a number of references to Ghostbusters 2. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. For people that were wondering, do they acknowledge the Statue of Liberty? Well, yeah. So, I definitely get a louder, more vibrant vibe, very much like what Ghostbusters 2 had. I think there's elements there, other respects of, in Ghostbusters 2, you had the River of Slime. In this one, you have the Frozen Empire. I feel like there is similar vibes there where River of Slime was going to rise up and it was going to cover the world in ectoplasm. Here, things are being frozen over. I think there is definitely some connection between those. And there is a fun factor that is the same in both of those. However, I don't want to say Frozen Empire is a better made film than Ghostbusters 2, but I kind of feel, but that's the thing. The fact that there's so much juggling of the characters, the fact there's so much intertwining of the characters, and Ghostbusters 2 kind of had that with, Rick Moranis and, Annie Potts and their little love thing. But then outside of that, it was really Vigo. And you had like the love dynamic between Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver. There is so many threads going about it. And they, for the most part, I feel like they all work. They all go together. And I don't know if that's a better sign that it's a better made film. And I know for some people out there that are listening to this, if you don't like Ghostbusters 2, I don't mean to compare this next to it because I feel like to some degree, this is a better made film. Just because all the juggling that is happening in this, and not only is it cohesive, it tells a story. You get more entranced with the Spengler family. You begin to like them a lot more. Not that you didn't beforehand, But you really pick up that dynamic, and it's crazy in the respects that looking back at Afterlife, there was never a scene with Bill Murray and Paul Rudd like in the same shot together.
Right.
You know, like they never shared the scene, the same
Right.
scene. So to see them in this together and to see them, doing the media junket together, it just clicks a little more for me. And I gotta
Mhm.
say, and this is no disrespect to anybody that had a hand in Afterlife, but because I think that's a tremendous film. I like Frozen Empire more than Afterlife. I love
That's
this
fair.
movie. I feel like they went all in on it. It is very much that real Ghostbusters vibe. And I think aside from wanting more out of certain actors, and not in terms of their performance, but more scenes of them and more, screen time, I feel like everybody brought it. Nobody phoned it in whatsoever. And there's a great bit, and it's in one of the trailers between Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson, where they're kind of like yelling at one another, or they're kind of getting into
Yeah.
like a tiff, right?
Right.
And it's wild for me that, there are these moments between these characters, and it's adding those extra dimensions. And it just really just kind of furthers my enjoyment of the franchise and furthers my enjoyment of how these, like, everybody's just developing. And I feel that with the Spengler family. I feel that with the main original Ghostbusters. And it just adds so many more layers to already the pre-existing films and the pre-existing, content that's out there of it. I really did enjoy this. I don't know, like, if I had to rate it, I don't know. I wouldn't say 10 Slimer booties out of 10, but it is very, very good. And I definitely have to sit down and watch it again.
Yeah.
Because I think you and I, we were both kind of in a daze and a haze of all the craziness that was happening 48 hours beforehand. But I cannot wait to sit down and give this a second watch and see if it hits as strong the second time around, because I got to give this glowing review. Like I said, it's not perfect. There are some things that I wish were a little different here and there, but it's not my vision. I wasn't, I wasn't driving this boat.
Sure.
But I got to say, Gil, Jason, they did phenomenal here.
A great job. Yeah. I mean, I will say that I think the reason that this is a different movie than Ghostbusters 2, but it reminds you of beats of it, is that Ghostbusters 2 has to reset what we're doing. It has an intro to like, where have we been? And we got to start ghostbusting again and get started from the ground up again. And this movie doesn't. It hits the ground running, right? And it's like, we're off, we're busting ghosts. We don't need to give you all this exposition about where the Ghostbusters have been and what they're up to. We can just jump right into busting ghosts and do all the fun part, right? And like, that's the thing I really like about this movie, is that there's always something going on. There is not like a scene where you sit there and go, oh, they're just like sitting around having a conversation. For some people, that may bum them out. Like, that may be a reason, like, I like the petty cash scene, like that's me too. But like, this is a scene where, like, this is a movie where you're going to get more of those running quips and jokes in the midst of action sequences that active ghost busting is happening during, or something else, So I think it's really cool. I'm really excited we got to see it. And I'm definitely going to see it again, because now I need to see it from at least 7 rows back.
I feel like, and this is going to sell it, I think, to a lot of the more hardcore fellow Ghostbusters nerds out there. To me, if IDW Comics, they did not lose the license, this is where we'd be now. I honestly feel like this.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
This kind of almost feels like a 4-part comic miniseries come to life, because you have so many elements going into it. And you've got that real Ghostbusters vibe. And Jason Reitman on the red carpet, he mentioned that, he loved the respects of like watching it, it feels like a real Ghostbusters episode. You watch it, they're going on their bus, you don't know where they're going to go. And you've got that new introductory ghost. You've got that new threat. And it very much has that. And not only the respects too, where it's, you've got Garaka, but you do have, you have Puki, you have the Possessor, which, I mean, Possessor, it's a new character, but come on now. It feels like it's like a Spirits Unleashed thing that was ripped, like, taken right from that game. Mm-hmm. And then you've got, Phosphor, and you've got these other kind of characters that you see. I was a little surprised that we didn't see, because, you have the containment unit and all these past ghosts, that we didn't have more Easter eggs, like in Afterlife, where you had the Bug-Eye ghost from Kenner. I was really expecting to see like maybe the Scalaries, or, Granny Gross, or Fearsome Flush. I'm surprised we didn't get anything like that. But it did not take me out of it whatsoever. I wasn't sitting there and being like, oh, if you don't give me Tony and Nunzio, I'm gonna hate this movie. The movie didn't need that. The fact that you did acknowledge Ghostbusters 2 more, that is reason enough alone for me to at least give it like a 5 out of 10. But from a quality standpoint, like I gotta say, like at least, again, not with repeat viewing yet, I would have to say like an 8, maybe.
Yeah.
Where I'm currently standing on it.
Yeah, I would say I'm about in the same place, right?
Yeah, really impressed overall, and the fact too that Nanjiani in this film, I cannot speak enough about how much I loved him in this. He's got a very almost Louis Tully bumblingness to him, and even though he does play a key role in this, very much at the end of this, it's almost that who turned out the lights? Because he did something really cool in the film. He played a key part, but he's still his character. And I'm really hoping that, the series continues so we can see more of him.
I have one burning question that will be left for me. What do you think happened to that pizza?
Yeah. That's kind of questionable there. I mean,
I'm gonna leave that one. I'm not even gonna say what I mean. For those of you who will watch the movie now after I've said that, you can weigh in and tell me what you think. You could just send me a message or a comment of like, what do you think happened to that pizza? Was honestly one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it was just, as much as I love pizza and I love Slimer. Having not only Slimer eat pizza in a movie, but having it be pivotal to the plot was like, we'll leave it at that because I don't want to spoil the joke for anybody.
It kind of makes me wonder how the whole like digestive system and the afterlife works when it comes to ghosts. Like,
this was my immediate nitpicking was about this.
It brings up some questions there, but and again here, like when it comes to Slimer, when it comes to the ending of the film, again, not giving away too much here, but it very much ends off. And not that like any real Ghostbusters episode ended like this, but it kind of feels like it ends like a beginning of a real Ghostbusters episode, if that makes any sense.
It does. I mean, like, it doesn't end with them being like, let's, go make a little kick dance down the street. Like, that's, but, like it definitely ends in a way that feels like it wraps up cleanly, like an episodic thing. And that's the way to think about it, is it's like, it's an episode. It's an hour and 45-minute long Ghostbusters episode.
And we're finally out of the era. I mean, and they kind of established too that because of Winston's smart thinking, that they're not shut down, that if they do another film, we're going to start up from where we left off again. And we're not going to have that back in business story that we got in the first 3 films, the first 3 the first 4 films, if you want to consider 2016.
No, agreed.
I mean, all those movies, it was, let's get back into business or let's get into business.
Yeah. Like that's what's really so different here, is that you don't need to do the origin story again. Right. Like, you just did it.
What they do is in the name. If you've never watched a Ghostbusters movie, you don't really need to know too much. You can come into this movie blind. Obviously you'd probably should watch at least Afterlife at the very least to get a connection with the Spangler family. But you can come into this without any prior knowledge, and you know what? You know exactly what ghost busting is.
Right.
You do not need to explain the business and have them going back into business every film. And I'm so glad that Gil and Jason they've gotten away from that.
Yeah, and I'm glad we got to see Annie Potts put on a uniform. It was one thing we didn't talk about, but it was fun to see that finally.
We were kind of jumping over all that nonsense of the final third act. I shouldn't say nonsense. It was a great.
It's not nonsense.
Third act. No. I mean, just nonsense in terms of the insanity and the visuals and everything that took place, because it is a feast for the eyes.
Absolutely, and
it's done well. And I mean, the entire scene, like all the CGI and how everything looks, they really did bring it. There was a couple shots in the trailer I was a little worried about, but again, I don't know if it was because on a massive screen that had me looking up at it, but in the theater, I thought this movie looked great.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it again. And I think we've given everybody a pretty long episode this week, probably the longest episode of Extraplasm that's ever existed, but We really needed to. I think there was a lot for us to unpack in terms of the premiere trip, our experience on the red carpet, and this movie and how great it is. And I want to encourage everybody, go see this movie, go see it like 10 times. I want this movie to be a total success so they make another one, because I don't want what we had to be a once in a lifetime experience. I want it to be a twice in a lifetime experience, or maybe a thrice, or maybe,
Which,
we'll make
for that to be the case, not only do you need to go watch this movie 10 times, but download every episode of Extraplasm podcast and go to Ghostbusters News and watch all the YouTube videos. And, email GhostCore and say, hey, I love Ghostbusters News and Extraplasm podcast. And, anything you guys ever do, they should cover it because they did such a bang up job. Hey, did you see their YouTube videos? You comment and, paste it into an email to them.
Hey, look, maybe they had a 3.5 hour long episode of a podcast, and that's a lot, but they at least broke it up so that way we didn't spoil anything if you didn't want to hear it.
This is, how much I hate myself, the fact that I'm on a podcast that is double the length of the film. You know how much? Oh man. I would see videos like that online. I was like, this is just so narcissistic. I hate this.
We're gonna get canceled.
Who's gonna sit there and watch or listen to a podcast that long? And here we are.
We did it. But I'm glad to have had
if you listen to this, you did it.
Yes. It's your fault. Thank you for sending us to make this incredibly long piece of content for you.
You know what you should do instead? You should have done instead of listening to this is you should have probably just went to the movie theater and watched Ghostbusters, bought 2 tickets. Bring your family and make this movie, bigger than Godzilla and Kong.
Hey, don't forget, the next thing we're going to do is sit down and record an entire listen along commentary so people can smuggle it into the theater. No, we're not going to do that. We'll do that when it comes out on streaming.
And somehow we'll make sure that's 3 hours too. So
yeah, it's fine. We'll just watch the movie twice. So
exactly.
But in all seriousness, I had a ton of fun getting to see this movie with you and to talk about it with you as usual, because it's always fun to chat with you. And I appreciate you spending so much time with me. Not only just, in person, but then also going home and being like, yeah, I'll get on a microphone and talk with you for hours on end some more. So thank you for that. You're awesome.
Problem. No, and I thank you for obviously, taking part in the shenanigans of the whole coverage of this premiere. And again, here, I just really want to send a huge thank you out to those in the power that made the decisions that put Ghostbusters News and Extraplasm and YHS and AJ Quick and so on and so forth, like that put us in these positions of just I couldn't imagine that type of coverage. Really. And the funny thing was too is nobody ever came to us and said, okay, don't say this or say this or what have you there. Everything that you're hearing from us coming out of here, it is unfiltered.
It was unfiltered.
Being us. Yeah. I am so surprised, and kudos to Sony, kudos to GhostCore, especially kudos to Eric Reich, and how accommodating those Empower. I mean, Jason, Gil, it was pretty amazing, and just a big thank you again to everybody listening, to the people that check out the website, the videos, all that. Read the articles on Ghostbusters News, because you guys out there, you're the reason. It wasn't the fact that we've been doing this for X amount of years. It wasn't the reason that Jim does weekly uploads. It's the fact that you guys support what we do. That's why we were there, and that means the world to myself, to Jim. I don't want to speak for anybody else there again, but I'm sure those also that were in that position, they share the exact same sentiment.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they do too, and I definitely do. And I want to say thanks myself, to everybody out there listening, everybody who said hello, everybody who tuned in, and checked out what was going on as I was putting lives up during the trip, etc. And so this is not the end of the coverage of this, I'm sure. I'm 100% positive, even though you and I have talked for 3 hours about things, that there will be more to come about the premiere and the movie as more of us see it and start interacting with it. So, consider this sort of like the big chunk of the iceberg, but it's still just the tip.
Oh man, we gotta oh God. And next week, check out Ghostbusters News on YouTube. We're going to be taking a look at, we got Regal popcorn buckets.
Yeah.
We got flipping, what was it there? The Ecto 1 popcorn bucket on the way too, that's being sent. There's so much content that is surrounded around this film. that is still to come. And we haven't even talked, box office success yet.
No.
Because I really am thinking this thing is going to be big. Hopefully I didn't jinx it, but I'm really thinking this thing is going to do big at the box office. I mean, Bill Murray himself on Jimmy Fallon, like he talked it up, and I don't know, man, it seemed real. It seemed real. The stuff he was saying, the sentiment there, what do you call it? Like a big sloppy movie that you're going to love.
That you're going to love. Yeah.
That you're going to love. And I mean, damn it, Bill, you're right. I love the movie. And, I was going to say something horrible there, but I'm not going to about you throwing water on me, but you did, but I still love you. You're the Hurricane. And, again, just a huge thank you goes out to everybody again, that's listening, supporting, and just to Ghost Corps and Sony, everyone there, you're amazing.
Yeah, likewise. I want to say thank you to Eric Reich and to Sony Pictures and, to Ghost Corps for having us, for entertaining my emails of being anxious about things about like, when do we pick things up? Just all of that. Just, it's such a joy to be a fan of something that you get a sense, people care about whether or not folks are appreciating it, have access, etc. And so, thank you to everybody who was involved, who helped to make this trip possible. And thank you to everybody listening. I think at this point, we'll probably put a pin in the episode because we're pretty much, I think we've talked for 3 hours, but
I think they need to sleep, Jim.
Yeah. So
I think they need to go to bed.
Yeah. No, some people are like really tired or, they just fell asleep while they were listening to this. So,
or we sold them to go watch Ghostbusters again, like, a third time.
Yeah.
Because you've already watched it twice, right? Like you had to. Anybody that's listening right now, it's pretty much your oath that your requirement that you've already watched Frozen Empire twice. So go watch it a third time.
If you haven't, then you need to run to the theater right now. Otherwise, you're a bad fan and nobody likes you. No, I'm kidding.
Buy some popcorn buckets. Buy anything with the Ghostbusters logo. Let's keep this franchise going.
That's right. That's right. Get hook them while they're young. It's like the cigarette industry. No. Jason, I appreciate you so much and thank you for letting me be a part of this adventure with you and for coming on the show and talking about this. Obviously, everybody should go check out all your coverage over on ghostbustersnews.com as you're continuing to post the video clips and stuff from the interviews that we talked about. Anything else that you want to let people know about before we head out for this week?
Just again, go watch Frozen Empire. Just that's all you need to do. I'm sure you don't need my. If you've gotten this far in a 3-hour-long podcast, and if you are not going to go watch Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and you just listen to all of this, what is wrong?
Yeah.
Like, who hurt you?
That would be weird.
That'd be so weird.
Go not be weird. Go watch the movie. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks again, Jason, for coming on the show. We'll talk to you again soon. That about wraps things up for Extraplasm this week. I want to say thank you as usual to Brendan Pierce of Beducci Studios, who provides our logo and visual identity. Brendan, I had t-shirts at the premiere because you designed them. Thank you so much. They looked great, and people commented on them. So thank you, Brendan, for helping to make Extraplasm a possibility and helping make it really identifiable and recognizable to people who identify the logo and see it. Beyond that, I want to say thank you to Vaporwave artist Magnavox, whose version of Ghostbusters serves as our theme song each week. And of course, I know I've said it a bunch of times in this episode, but I'll say it again. Thank you to you for tuning in, for listening, for checking out Extraplasm each week, for making this a worthwhile project for me to engage, for me and Jason to be able to bring you coverage and be excited about it. And to those of you who I met face to face, thank you for your warm handshakes, your smiles, your memories, and of course, like the cool patches and badges and all the cool stuff you gave me. There was so much of it didn't want to fit in the suitcase, but I have to say it was an amazing trip, and you all are an amazing community of listeners. I love talking with you each week. If you have something to share, by all means, reach out to extraplasompodcast@gmail.com, Extraplasm on Instagram or X, or Extraplasm Podcast on Facebook or YouTube. Get out there, see Frozen Empire, enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. And remember, as Ernie Hudson says every week,
try to have fun and always keep on busting. Take care.